Chapter 46-28. Then, Wen Chu recounted Xiao Hua's experience in Inkcloud Black Forest. It was similar to the real situation, but there was an extra Wen Chu. Xiao Hua was also helping Wen Chu. Wen Chu's so-called Clearstream Sword sect did not exist, so he did not care about the High Purity Palace Master's questions. In the end, Wen Chu looked at the High Purity Palace Master and said with a smile, "The High Purity Palace Master's secret move is really powerful. If Daoist Xiao did not block the sword for me that day, I would have died in Inkcloud Black Forest." He. The High Purity Palace Master smiled and said, "What I left in the cave is the secret art of Confucianism. How can I let others take it away? How can I do it without some powerful means?" Daoist Xiao happened to have a shaman puppet from Million Meng Mountain, otherwise his soul would have been scattered. Wen Chu was the same as Xiao Hua. He spoke 9 sentences of truth and 1 sentence of lie. The High Purity Palace Master did not notice anything strange. One who survives a great disaster will have good fortune in the future. The High Purity Palace Master smiled and said, "Daoist Xiao, aren't you a Daoist Mahayana realm cultivator, the lightning master of my immortal palace?" The High Purity Palace Master also asked some questions and finally smiled and said, "Oh right, where is the sword intent I left in the cave?" The Wen Chu Palace Master did not seem to have it. "Oh, that sword intent was divided into 2. Wen Chu smiled and said, "One was given to Yu Zhongxuan and the other to Chang Yuan. That day, Yu Zhongxuan ran away from the marriage. Because of this sword intent, the 2 of them became a couple." So that's how it is. The High Purity Palace Master clapped and said with a smile, "This king's sword intent can be used as a matchmaker. This is really beyond my expectations. In that case, Yu Zhongxuan and Chang Yuan are also this king's disciples." "Indeed." Wen Chu smiled and said, "Now, the 2 of them are at the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range's Fortune Gate. If you have time, this old man invites Daoist Xiao to bring them to the High Purity Palace." "Okay." The High Purity Palace Master agreed. After the Tai Ching Palace Master finished speaking, the Shangqing Palace Master opened his mouth, as if he wanted to ask something, but seemed to have some misgivings. Xiao Hua knew that he might want to ask about the Sword Heart Elemental Seed Technique and the Primordial Spirit Strengthening Technique. He thought for a moment, and simply took the initiative to ask, "That's right, other than the Deer Sword Intent, the 2 immortals also left 2 secret techniques in the cave. At that time, fellow Daoist Wen Chu and I didn't know much about it. But later on, when our cultivations deepened, we realized that these 2 secret techniques were infinitely profound. There were even traces of the Primordial Spirit Division and the External Incarnation Technique. I wonder." The Master of the Shangqing Palace smiled and asked, "Have Master Xiao Lei and the Master of the Wenxiu Palace cultivated it?" "To tell you the truth, Master of the Shangqing Palace," Wen Chu said with a smile, "when we got the secret skill, we were overjoyed. We started to practice it after we left the Inkcloud Black Forest. However, we found that there was a great danger in it. Although it was a divine skill to practice the flying sword, there was a danger of stepping on air if we wanted to improve it further. Therefore, we didn't practice it too much without full confidence." "Alas, you didn't practice it too much." "That's right." The Master of the Shangqing Palace sighed and said, "This cultivation technique has a great flaw. Although we tried our best to fix it, we couldn't perfect it. We tried it many times. If it weren't for the Buddhist sect's reincarnation technique, I'm afraid we would have died long ago. Actually, it's not that we didn't understand it. It's just that our Confucian cloning technique has a flaw compared to the external incarnation technique of the demon clan." The Master of the Tai Ching Palace didn't hide it and explained, "The demon clan's cloning technique is generally weaker than the main body, and the cloning technique is easily controlled by the main body. However, the cloning technique of the Confucian cloning technique cultivates the cloning technique, and the cultivation level of the cloning technique may not be controlled by the main body. It's easy to control the cloning technique when it's weaker than the main body. However, if the main body is surpassed by the cloning technique, the main body may be devoured, and the cloning technique will be destroyed at the same time. Of course, in extreme cases, the cloning technique may also kill the main body. The master of the Shangqing Palace added, "There were a few times when we encountered this kind of situation and had no choice but to kill the cloning technique. We were also afraid of the backlash. Later on, we discovered that the most fundamental reason wasn't the cultivation method, but a problem with a law in the human world. We can't explain what this law is, but as long as this law exists, our human race may never be able to cultivate a real out-of-body incarnation." Xiaohua naturally knew that the law the master of the Shangqing Palace was talking about was the essence. After all, the cultivators of the mortal realm couldn't cultivate more essence for their cloning technique. Therefore, for a cloning technique to become a cloning technique, it had to obtain essence from the main body. If the cloning technique's strength surpassed the main body, it would inevitably obtain more essence. If the main body lost essence, it would naturally suffer a backlash. At this point, the primordial spirit-splitting technique had come to an end. Xiaohua decided not to mention it again to avoid arousing the suspicion of the master of the Liangqing Palace. Afterward, the master of the Liangqing Palace casually asked about the Dawn Rain continent, and Xiaohua and Wenchu calmly answered. However, to Xiaohua's surprise, the master of the Liangqing Palace didn't ask how Xiaohua came to the 3 continents. It seemed that they also knew that Xiaohua wouldn't tell them, or they had already lost interest in the Dawn Rain continent. Xiaohua originally wanted to take the opportunity to ask, but thinking about how much the master of the Shangqing Palace cared about the fragments of the Sword of Tenderness like water, after the cloning technique reincarnated, he would definitely try his best to find the location of the Dawn Rain continent. Now that he was already the master of the Shangqing Palace, if he still couldn't go to the Dawn Rain continent, it must be that he hadn't found the spatial vein to go to the Dawn Rain continent. It was also possible that, as Fairy Xingyu said, there was no spatial passage from the 3 continents to the Dawn Rain continent. Therefore, Xiaohua didn't want to ask any more. Seeing the change of dawn and dusk on the morning and evening cliff and the rolling clouds under the abyss, Xiaohua smiled and said, "Master of the Shangqing Palace, Master of the Taiqing Palace, since we have already revealed the secret, there's no need to hide too much from each other. In the future, we will all be in the hidden immortal continent, and there will be plenty of time to talk about it in detail. I'm already a little anxious at this time." The masters of the Shangqing Palace naturally understood Xiaohua's meaning and stood up. Just as the master of the Taiqing Palace was about to speak, the master of the Shangqing Palace said anxiously, "Master Xiao Lei, this king still has one last thing to discuss with Master Immortal. Master Xiao Lei, please wait for a moment." Xiaohua's heart moved, and he nodded slightly in reply. The master of the Shangqing Palace looked at Wenchu and said in a low voice, "Master Immortal, this king has a presumptuous request. I hope Master Immortal can consider it." "Oh? Master of the Shangqing Palace, please speak." Wenchu raised her eyebrows and said curiously. "That." The master of the Shangqing Palace hesitated for a moment and said, "Tenderness like water is the token of love between this king and Fairy Li Hua. If nothing unexpected happens, there must be information about Fairy Li Hua's reincarnation within it. This king's only regret in this life is that I can't obtain Fairy Li Hua's forgiveness, and my only hope is to obtain tenderness like water." Now, although the 9 stars soaring sun sword pellet has already been refined by Master Immortal, if Master Immortal erases the projection of your soul, this king still has the confidence to refine these sword pellets into the true tenderness like water. The master of the Taiqing Palace also said in a low voice at the side, "This king is also clear about the master of the Shangqing Palace's thoughts. If possible, Could Master Immortal return this tenderness like water to the master of the Shangqing Palace? Even if he has to pay some price, it's also possible. Wen Chu was a bit embarrassed and looked at Xiaohua. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "Fellow Immortal, although this 9 stars soaring sun sword pellet was obtained by this Xiao has already given it to Fellow Immortal. Fellow Immortal, you can make your own decision." Speaking of the 9 stars soaring sun sword pellet, Wen Chu really didn't want to return it to the master of the Shangqing Palace. After all, this sword pellet could be said to be Wen Chu's earliest shell. How could he bear to give it away? But thinking about Fairy Li Hua's miserable appearance just now, and thinking about how the master of the Shangqing Palace had taken risks time and time again, wasn't it all to find the tenderness like water sword? If he took this sword pellet, although it would be a souvenir, Fairy Li Hua would never be able to see the master of the Shangqing Palace ever again. Therefore, Wen Chu pondered for a moment, raised his head and looked at the master of the Shangqing Palace, and asked, "This old man can give you the tenderness like water sword. However, this is not called returning it." Of course this is not called returning it. The master of the Shangqing Palace was overjoyed and hurriedly answered, "This king will exchange it with Master Immortal at all costs." Xianyuan sword. Wen Chu lightly spat out 3 words. You want the Xianyuan sword?" The master of the Shangqing Palace and the master of the Taiqing Palace were both stunned. Yes. Wen Chu nodded affirmatively. The master of the Shangqing Palace smiled bitterly and said, "Master Immortal, you probably don't know what this Xianyuan sword means, right? That day, this king didn't dare to agree to Fairy Li Hua's request and didn't want to yield to the Immortal Palace because I didn't want to get this Xianyuan sword." "Oh? Is there something fishy about it?" Wen Chu asked curiously. The master of the Taiqing Palace shook his head. "This matter can't be discussed by us. If you want it, I'm sure the master of the Shangqing Palace will definitely be willing to give it to you. However, Master Immortal must think clearly." Wen Chu lowered his head and pondered. He didn't look at Xiaohua. However, after a moment, he raised his head and said, "This old man has decided. The master of the Shangqing Palace can exchange the Xianyuan sword for the tenderness like water sword." Good. The master of the Shangqing Palace didn't hesitate. He raised his hand and took the Xianyuan sword and its scabbard from his waist, and handed it to Wen Chu. Seeing that the master of the Shangqing Palace was so straightforward, Wen Chu was instead a little surprised. However, after thinking for a moment, he took the Xianyuan sword and hung it on his waist. He had already refined it with 5-colored true energy in his middle dantian and wiped out the primordial spirit's shadow and all the other sword intents inside. When the master of the Shangqing Palace received the 9 sword intents, he opened his mouth again and spat out the sword pills that had been refined for who knows how many years. He raised his hand and pointed, and the 9 sword intents respectively fell into the 9 sword pills. Buzz! The 9 sword pills rushed out different sword lights and danced around the master of the Shangqing Palace lively. "Many thanks, Master Immortal." "Many thanks, Master Xiao Lei." The master of the Shangqing Palace was full of smiles. He opened his mouth again and swallowed the 9 sword pills into his stomach. He cupped his hands towards Wen Chu and Xiaohua and said, "This king will take his leave. If you have time, you can come to the Shangqing Palace for a drink. Farewell." The master of the Taiqing Palace was also happy. He nodded towards Wen Chu and Xiaohua and put away the defensive formation. Then, the master of the 2 Purities Palace turned into multicolored light and rushed into the earth, fire, wind, and thunder, disappearing without a trace. Chapter 46-29. After the 2 left, Xiaohua frowned and said, "Fellow Immortal, those 9 sword pills are very important to you. Why did you exchange for the Xianyuan sword of unknown origin for no reason?" Look at how casual the master of Shangqing Palace is, the Xianyuan sword is like a burden. Wen Chu smiled and handed the Xianyuan sword to Xiaohua. Although the sword pills are important to me, the Xianyuan sword is even more important to you. If you don't take advantage of the fact that the immortal emperor doesn't know, how can you have the chance in the future? You. Xiaohua was stunned and said in disbelief, you exchanged it for I? If not for you, who else would I exchange it for? Wen Chu stuffed the Xianyuan sword into Xiaohua's hand and said, you and I are one. What you think is naturally what I think. Xiaohua took the Xianyuan sword, and his heart warmed. The previous unhappiness of losing something disappeared in an instant, and an even warmer feeling was born. This feeling is really good. Xiaohua couldn't help but sigh. At this moment, Xiaohua had no time to look at the Xianyuan sword. Although in his heart, he felt that since the master of Shangqing Palace had given the Xianyuan sword to Wen Chu so easily, although he didn't have any evil intentions, the Xianyuan sword itself might not be without any tricks. After Xiaohua put the Xianyuan sword into the space, he said, we'll talk about this later. Fellow immortal, come with I to explore the abyss now. Hee hee. Wen Chu laughed and raised his hand to take out the mountain river seal. He blinked his eyes at Xiaohua and replied, Master Xiao Lei is used to working hard, but you forgot that this old man also has a nation weapon here. Some of my disciples are also cultivating in it. The abyss is so big, and you and I have limited energy. Why don't we ask them to help? Ha! Xiaohua slapped his forehead and laughed. I really forgot about this. My Kunlun mirror was taken away by a celestial, so I neglected my disciples. As they spoke, Wen Chu activated the mountain and river seal, and Xiaohua sent out tens of thousands of disciples from the Shenhua continent. The two of them gave their orders, and the disciples immediately flew into the abyss. Seeing the dense clouds covering the disciples, Xiaohua felt warmth in his heart. He looked at Wen Chu and said, it feels good to have a home. Yes, I think so too. Wen Chu's face was also filled with emotion, and he was about to rush into the abyss as well. At this moment, Xiaohua's heart was moved again, and he said, fellow immortal, please go ahead. I've just gained some insights, and I need to comprehend them for a moment. Wen Chu naturally knew what Xiaohua was thinking and said with a smile, since that's the case, I'll stand guard for you by the side. With so many disciples working hard, I can also rest for half a day. All right. Xiaohua said as he sat down cross-legged, releasing his consciousness to collect the souls from the previous battle. The battle did not last long, and the casualties among the Fortune Gate's disciples were very light. Xiaohua was not in a hurry to collect the souls. Later, when the two Purities Palace's master appeared, Xiaohua did not dare to use his divine ability. Only now did he have the time to collect the souls. In less than half a day, Xiaohua had collected all the remnant souls from the array formation. Just as he was about to follow Wen Chu down to the abyss to search, 100 Fortune Gate disciples carefully flew out from the abyss with a heaven punishment prison crystal in their hands. So fast? Not to mention Wen Chu, even Xiaohua was dumbfounded. Wen Chu said that she wanted the Fortune Gate disciples to search for the heaven punishment prison crystal in the abyss, but in reality, she wanted them to search for any abnormalities in the abyss. After all, the heaven punishment prison crystal was personally suppressed by immortal Emperor Go Chen. How could these Fortune Gate disciples find it so easily? Even Xiaohua and Wen Chu were prepared to use their great divine abilities. Could it be? Xiaohua had an ominous premonition in his heart. Wen Chu hurriedly comforted, fellow immortal, don't worry. Although immortal Emperor Go Chen is an immortal emperor who rules the immortal palace and intimidates the 100 schools of thought, he is still a father. Xian is also his biological daughter. Even a vicious tiger will not eat its own cubs. He might have left a little bit of his family here. Xiaohua sneered, looking at the disciples flying over happily, and replied indifferently, "If that's the case, the East Sea Empress wouldn't have said that he has changed. He even hates his own wife, what else can't he give up?" The relationship between husband and wife seems to be a little different from familial love, right? Wen Chu was a little emotional at the beginning, so she didn't dare to be arbitrary and said in a low voice. Xiaohua instantly thought of his home in the Guozhuang house and nodded, "I hope immortal Emperor Go Chen's last bit of familial love hasn't been extinguished." The disciples respectfully handed the heaven punishment prison crystal to Xiaohua. Xiaohua wasn't in a hurry to break the inscription chains on the crystal. Instead, he ordered, "Go and search again, see if there are any abnormalities." When Wen Chu heard this, she opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but she hesitated. After all the disciples left, Wen Chu said in a low voice, "Generally, 2 heaven punishment prison crystals won't be placed together because the inscription chains between them will affect each other." "I know." Xiaohua nodded, looked at the heaven punishment prison crystal in his hand, and handed it to Wen Chu. Wen Chu threw the heaven punishment prison crystal into the air, and with a slap on the top of her head, a 5-colored giant hand grabbed down from the air. Boom! Even the heaven's punishment prison crystal that was personally sealed by immortal Emperor Go Chen disintegrated in an instant under Wen Chu's Zhenqi. Seeing the chains collapsing and the inscriptions shattering, the sky was filled with layers of lightning and shadows. An immortal palace inspector swayed and flew out. His majestic voice was like thunder as he said, "How dare you? Who dares to touch my immortal palace's heaven's punishment prison crystal?" "It's Xiaohua." Xiaohua didn't use any divine ability, and only lightly replied. Although the voice was very soft, when the light shadow passed by, the light shadow instantly trembled. The arrogant aura from before immediately disappeared. A tall inspector with a clear face revealed himself awkwardly. He bowed and said, "Junior greets Master Xiao Lei and the Master of the Scholar Palace. Junior didn't know the 2 seniors were here, please forgive me." "No matter." Xiaohua understood these inspectors very well, and said with a smile, "This is your duty, how can this old man blame you? This old man was ordered by the immortal emperor to break the seal, you only need to go back and report." Yes, Junior understands." Seeing that Xiaohua even brought out immortal Emperor Go Chen, the inspector didn't dare to say anything more. He looked at the light somewhat pitifully, and still didn't dare to leave without permission. Xiaohua was displeased, but he still said, "Since that's the case, you can wait here for a moment." "Many thanks for Master Xiao Lei's sympathy, many thanks for Master Xiao Lei's sympathy." The inspector was abnormally happy. Boom! At this moment, an aura of the immortal palace and the laws of heaven and earth soared into the sky from the light. Tens of thousands of heaven punishment prison crystal fragments also scattered in all directions. Xiaohua was too lazy to care about these minor details, and his eyes unblinkingly stared at the light. Unfortunately, where the light dimmed, where the aura dissipated, there was an empty space. The new princess who was supposed to be imprisoned was actually not there. Damned Go Chen! You actually dared to play with me! Xiaohua roared angrily. Looking at the horizon, the inspector next to him, who was about to use his divine ability to collect the heaven punishment prison crystal fragments, trembled in fear and stopped on the spot. Let's go! How could Xiaohua be willing to accept this? He urged his body to rush into the abyss, and Wen Chu naturally followed him. Seeing that a Master Xiao Lei and an immortal master had left, the inspector shrunk his neck and hurriedly collected the heaven punishment prison crystal fragments, then hurriedly urged the light to leave this dangerous place. Wen Chu was right. The abyss of the morning and evening cliff looked very dangerous, but there was nothing special below. Tens of thousands of disciples had already searched the area within 100,000 li, but they didn't find anything special. Even when Xiaohua used his divine ability and used his delirium-piercing Dharma eye to search inch by inch, he still didn't find a second heaven punishment prison crystal. Damn it, damn it, damn it! Xiaohua roared angrily on the morning and evening cliff. At this point, how could Xiaohua not know that he and the four great clans had fallen into immortal Emperor Go Chen's trap? However, he could only curse here. He wanted to attack the immortal palace again. But he couldn't. This was because immortal Emperor Go Chen had clearly stated that Xiaohua needed to find Princess Xin himself. If he found the real one, then it was his fortune. If he found the fake one, then it was his own incompetence. At this moment, Xiaohua understood even more clearly that even though he used the karmic hand, immortal Emperor Go Chen must have used a divine ability to reverse yin and yang. The information Xiaohua obtained through the karmic hand was only a smokescreen released by immortal Emperor Go Chen. As for the Nangong clan and the four great clans, Xiaohua believed that even if they didn't know anything about foresight, as long as Princess Qing was there, with her jealousy towards Xin, she could casually release some misleading information to lure Nangong Tianji to the morning and evening cliff. Don't worry, fellow immortal. Even though Wen Chu was also a bit anxious, he still comforted Xiaohua. Princess Xin has been sealed inside the Heaven Punishment Prison crystal for several hundred years, there is no need to rush now. Right now, attacking the Immortal Palace is meaningless. We should return to the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range first. The sutra seeking extreme bliss is about to end, isn't Immortal Emperor Go Chen going to the Town of Longevity? I will wait there to block him. Block? When Xiaohua heard Wen Chu's words, the gloominess in his heart disappeared, and he smiled. Immortal friend's use of the word block is very clever. Of course. Wen Chu's eyebrows danced, and it was a bit exaggerated as he said, the Buddhist sect has the Maitreya Buddha, the demon race has the heaven-defying lightning phoenix, the immortal palace has this old man, and the Taoist sect has the Fortune Gates sect master. If facing immortal Emperor Go Chen together, what is it if not block? Let's go. We will return to the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. Xiaohua laughed and waved his hand at the surrounding disciples, shouting, along the way, spread the news of our Fortune Gate breaking the alliance of the four great clans at the morning and evening cliff. Yes, disciple understands. The group of Fortune Gate's disciples were also in high spirits, and they replied loudly, we will obey the sect master's orders, give it as a reward, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 46-30. Xiaohua returned to the Fortune Gate with his victorious army, and the results of the battle at Dawn and Dusk Cliff swept through the entire hidden immortal continent like a tornado. There were those who were gloating over Xiaohua's misfortune, those who were overjoyed, and those who were alarmist, but most of them were eagerly awaiting the reaction of the four families. Unfortunately, the four families were completely oblivious to this and didn't give any response. Zhai Xinglu, on the other hand, announced the details of the battle in full detail, and even revealed the source of the enmity between Xiaohua and the four families. Not only did Zhai Xinglu earn a lot of primordial stones, but it also aroused the hatred of the female cultivators of the hidden immortal continent. Although Confucian cultivators emphasized the parents' orders and the matchmaker's words, which woman didn't yearn for a beautiful, eternal love? Who didn't want to find a partner who could be with them for eternity? Why had the tender emotion sword become the #1 weapon of Confucian cultivators? Wasn't it just the story of an infatuated woman and a heartless noble from the immortal palace? Now, a grand ascension stage human cultivator was standing right before their eyes. This man had fought his way to the southern heavenly gate all by himself, and he had fought against the four most ancient families of Confucian cultivators by himself. He had done all this for the sake of the love in his heart and to give his lover a lifetime of happiness. How could these women not be convinced? Thus, before Xiaohua had even returned to the Fortune Gate, countless stories had already been told. Xiaohua's handsome, stalwart, and infatuated image was tens of thousands of times more arrogant than that of a grand ascension stage human cultivator. Xiao Lei, Xiao Longsher, the Fortune Gate, the Soaring Dragon Mountain Ranges, the Xiao Nation, and the new princess had become a must-have topic of conversation, and they were even more famous than the sutra seeking extreme bliss. Even though the Tao Gate's chances of prosperity were still very slim, Xiaohua's rise had already been revealed to the world. Xiaohua naturally received this news as well, and he knew that Bian had done this on purpose. A wry smile appeared on his face, and he had to admit that this method was quite effective. In fact, he felt that the influence of this method was definitely not inferior to that of a grand ascension stage human cultivator. Fellow immortal. Xiaohua looked at the soaring dragon mountain range in the distance with a very depressed expression and said with a smile, "Now I finally understand why the verbal condemnation of Confucian cultivators is more powerful than sabers, spears, swords, and halberds. Perhaps sabers, spears, swords, and halberds can destroy the body, but verbal condemnation can destroy the heart. It's not just the human heart." Wen Chu laughed. "It's simply stepping on people and making them infamy for generations to come. This is also the reason why Fairy Xingyu established Star Moon back then." Xiaohua thought of Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu and said, "Although Senior Su is powerful, his influence in the 3 continents is far inferior to that of Fairy Xingyu. The ancients once said, even the fragrance of wine fears the depth of the alley. That's the truth." Wen Chu chimed in, "For the sake of the new princess, fellow immortal is willing to risk his life to fight with the 4 aristocratic families. If we don't spread the news, who would know?" The 4 aristocratic families and the immortal palace didn't feel any pressure at all. Now that the 4 aristocratic families and the immortal palace have become the target of public criticism, I'm sure immortal Emperor Gaochen will find a way to get out of this situation. Bai En is also from the immortal palace. Using the immortal palace's method to deal with the immortal palace is just that old man Gaochen asking for trouble. Xiaohua sneered. Speaking of this, Xiaohua's heart trembled as he thought of something and said, "Let's speed up. This Xiao has some doubts in his heart and needs to discuss them with fellow Taoists." Just as Xiaohua approached the soaring dragon mountain range, the celestial being and the others came to greet him. In fact, they were not much earlier than Xiaohua, but Xiaohua was able to slow down, while the celestial being had returned a few days earlier. Xiaohua received the Kunlun mirror that was returned to him by a heavenly being. Before he could say anything, the group of disciples who had stayed behind bowed respectfully. Looking at their high spirits, they naturally knew about the Fortune Gate's victory. Xiaohua put away the Kunlun mirror, helped the disciples up, and gave them a few words of encouragement before entering the Fortune Gate Palace. Xiaohua sat down on the jade chair. First, he let out Yu Zhongxuan and the other disciples, then he asked Daoist Witch and the other clones to come out. When Daoist Witch came out, there was nothing unusual. When Archfiend Shi came out, the entire soaring dragon mountain range was suddenly covered with golden and black stripes. The moment these stripes appeared, more dragon stripes appeared, and when the dragon stripes changed, more green stripes appeared. Layer after layer of the laws of heaven and earth came surging over like waves. Although the laws of heaven and earth were surging, the disciples couldn't sense them. Most of them were looking at the ripples in the sky, feeling puzzled. This is... Xiaohua was greatly shocked. He hastily summoned the mirror of Kunlun and was about to rise to his feet from the jade chair. Right at this moment, all the Tao of heaven and earth poured down, falling right onto Reverend Yun, Shifiend, Daoist Wu, and even Wen Chu, causing ripples to appear on her body. Ha! Xiaohua felt as if he had lost something, but also gained something more. He suddenly understood. He cupped his fists and said, "Congratulations, fellow Daoist." Reverend Yun, Archfiend Shi, and Daoist Witch stood quietly in midair, not saying a word. The disciples were also silent as they waited quietly. After the time it took to finish a pot of tea, Archfiend Shi said, "Kaka, I understand now. This is..." Xiaohua didn't wait for him to finish. He waved his hand and silenced the surroundings. Reverend Yun opened his eyes and raised his dragon head. With a thunderous voice, he said, "So, this is a dragon. I understand now. The dragon cleansing pool is just the body of a dragon. The so-called dragon nature is far from what I thought." "That's right." At this moment, the green gleam in Taoist Witch's eyes slowly faded away as he said, "My Tao is not your Tao, my heart is not your heart, and my nature is not your nature." Xiaohua was happy as well. He turned and looked at the disciples, then waved his hand and said, "You may leave now." "Yes," disciple congratulates the sect masters. Although the disciples didn't know what was going on, they knew it was a happy occasion. Therefore, they bowed and congratulated before leaving. After all the disciples left, Xiaohua looked at Lightning Reverend and Celestial Being. Both of them were confused, not knowing what was going on. "Fellow Taoists, don't you feel anything?" Xiaohua was puzzled, so he reminded them. "No." Lightning Reverend and Celestial Being shook their heads. "Never mind." Xiaohua smiled and said, "Everyone has different opportunities. I'm afraid your opportunity has yet to arrive." The strange phenomenon this time was different from Wen Chu's. Wen Chu had only formed his human nature for a short while, and it happened when the High Purity Palace's master was breaking through the knot in his heart. Therefore, no one noticed it. On the other hand, Taoist Witch, Reverend Yun, and Archdevil Venerable Shi had formed their own natures, and they only stopped after an hour. Xiaohua pondered for a moment and understood. Not to mention that Reverend Yun was different from the Dragon Clan in the Three Mainlands, and Archdevil Venerable Shi was different from the ordinary Devil Clan. Even Taoist Witch had formed his own natures after devouring a lot of ruined souls. What was more special was that each of the three clones had formed different laws, which affected each other. That was why they had formed such a huge commotion. As for why the three clones had only formed their own natures now, it must be because Wen Chu had formed his human nature first and triggered the laws of heaven and earth, which affected the three clones at the same time. After everything quieted down, the 9 Fortune Gate patriarchs sat down on their jade chairs. Xiaohua opened his mouth. "First, congratulations to fellow Taoists, but this humble Taoist still has some words to say. We are born from the same roots, and we are closer than Fortune Gate's disciples. Although our cultivation paths are different, we must not fight against each other. Don't worry, big brother." Archdevil Venerable Shi smiled and said, "Although little brother and Wen Chu do not get along well, little brother didn't dare to fight with Wen Chu before. But from today onwards, little brother suddenly discovered that little brother and Wen Chu's minds are connected, and it is impossible for us to fight. Moreover." Speaking to hear, Demon Venerable Shi smiled and said, "Isn't big brother still the leader? How could little brother and the others dare to disobey?" Archdevil Venerable Shi was right. He was different from Xiaohua's other clones, as he was refined using the blood shadow art of the Devil Clan. In fact, he couldn't be considered as Xiaohua's true clone. But because of his trip to the upper realm, he had coincidentally obtained the energy essence and devoured the Devil Formation's Devil Spirit, which allowed him to become one of Xiaohua's clones. Now that even he could coexist peacefully with Wen Chu, Xiaohua was relieved. Moreover, after Wen Chu and the other clones became adults, they would be able to communicate with each other just like Xiaohua before. Although Xiaohua felt that they had been separated, in reality, Xiaohua was also clear that he still had the ability to control these clones. "Fellow Taoists, I came out. If I don't believe in fellow Taoists, doesn't that mean I don't believe in myself?" Xiaohua smiled and said, "I was just reminding everyone. Don't worry, fellow Taoist, we understand. We are bound together for good or ill." The clones also agreed with a smile. Although each of them had different appearances, their smiles were the same. Seeing everyone's smiles, Xiaohua couldn't help but smile as well. He had cultivated the Green Hill Sex transformation technique, and his clones had also gained some benefits. Now, even if he faced the Vairocana Buddha, Xiaohua was confident that he wouldn't let anyone see through his disguise. As for the two Purities Temple's master, because he was the Sword Heart Seed's master, Xiaohua had to be on guard. Then, Xiaohua said, after the battle at Chaomuya, our fortune gate has shown its prowess. From now on, no one will dare to provoke our fortune gate. However, this Xiao has two doubts about this battle. Oh? What doubts does fellow Daoist have? Daoist Yun didn't participate in the battle, so he asked curiously. Xiaohua looked at Wen Chu and said, in this battle, although the four big families sent out 900,000 disciples, including Dongfang Qianghao, Shimen Jianzhong, Nangong Tian, and Baiming Chou Qing, and dozens of 9th-grade Essence Force 1 sages, and the battle was fierce, but now that I think about it, the four big families seem to have taken advantage of the situation. Each family has more than 200,000 disciples, right? Although my fortune gate has become extremely powerful, it is still far from enough to contend against the four big families with just the strength of my fortune gate alone. Even if our fortune gate's strength is enough to resist the Nangong family, I can still laugh secretly. Give it a tip, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 46-31. Fellow Taoists, don't forget how long the four great clans have existed. How many years have they been plotting in the hidden immortal continent? How many years has it been since our fortune gate rose? Moreover, the four patriarchs didn't seem to have used their full strength. Wen Chu, celestial being, lightning immortal, what do you think? Fellow Taoist is right. Wen Chu pondered for a moment and said, that Dongfang Qianghao did use some powerful methods, but it would be a joke to say that this was Dongfang Qianghao's most powerful method. Dongfang Qianghao definitely didn't use his full strength. Of course he didn't use his full strength. Lightning Immortal disagreed with Xiaohua's opinion and said, didn't we also not use our full strength? We all know that this is Immortal Emperor Go Chen's plan, who would really fight to the death. But the problem is, Celestial being pretended to be deep in thought and said, the four great clans' goal is fellow Taoist Wen Chu's 5 Qi unification art. Didn't they just risk their lives to capture fellow Taoist Wen Chu? Oh, wasn't that saint at the end the most powerful method of the four great clans? How can you say that they didn't use their full strength? If you put it that way, it makes sense. Wen Chu nodded and said with a smile, after all, they have 2 saint statues, which is enough to suppress all literary stars. They don't need to put in more effort in other aspects. Unfortunately, they miscalculated. Xiaohua said with a smile, the heaven-defying lightning phoenix is the great saint of the starry sky, the star of 10,000 stars, the saint of 10,000 saints. Fellow Taoist Wen Chu is a saint literary star. How can the four great clans' half-saint literary stars compare to her? Exactly. The group of clones laughed in unison. How can our fortune gate's third old master be compared to the four great clans? After everyone finished laughing, Xiaohua waved his hand and said, although this battle was strange, it's already over, so let's not talk about it. I will talk about my second doubt. Fellow Taoist, please speak. Lightning Immortal rushed to ask, as if he was as human as Wen Chu. Xiaohua said, I's second doubt is about the four great clan saint statues. Wen Chu clapped and praised, good. Fellow Taoist, you are indeed meticulous. You are the saint who disappeared among the Confucian cultivators. Even with my current cultivation, I don't know where this saint disappeared to. Now that he suddenly appeared in the saint statue of the four great families of the hidden immortal continent, it really gave me a shock. I am a very mysterious saint. Xiaohua looked at the puzzled faces of the Thunderbolt Immortal and the others and explained, of course, it can also be said that the Confucian cultivators can avoid him, making him disappear from the sight of the Confucian cultivators and the world. Strange. Why is that? Sage Thunderbolt asked. Xiaohua muttered to himself for a moment, then said regretfully, in the ancient records of Confucian cultivators, there are very few records about Laozi. However, even these few records are extremely important, making people feel extremely shocked. Xiaohua explained, Laozi wrote 37 chapters of the Tao chapter and 44 chapters of the Virtue chapter. Together, they were called the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching was known as the king of all scriptures in some ancient books. The Tao that can be spoken of is not the Tao. Names can be named, but not names. This is a famous saying in the Tao Te Ching. However, this famous Tao Te Ching, the hidden immortal continent, only has its name and no book. No one knows what is written in it. Laozi left behind 10 precepts. Now, only, if things succeed, the common people will naturally follow me. The way of the saint is not to fight. If a man does not fight, no one in the world can fight against him, knowing when to stop leads to disaster. If a man does not overflow, he can cover up and make new achievements. Those who know others are wise, those who know themselves are bright. Those who win are powerful, those who win are strong, do nothing, governing a country is like cooking a small fish. These 6 precepts, no one knows what the other 4 precepts are. Wen Chu also continued to explain, and the most important thing is that there are records in the history books that the Confucian cultivator, sage Confucius, once treated Laozi as a teacher. It is this very important saint in the history of Confucian cultivators, but he did not leave behind any doctrine or school. Within the 100 schools of thought, there is no trace of Laozi. Xiaohua said with a smile, fellow Taoists, don't you think this is strange? Very strange indeed. Lightning Reverend answered first, as if he had already regained his humanity. Oh, by the way, fellow immortal Wen Chu. Xiaohua suddenly thought of something and asked, do you still remember what the saints were chanting when their statues appeared? I think it's. You may be named, but you are not named in Hanggu Pass. Wen Chu also seemed to be unable to remember clearly, and answered with uncertainty. Hanggu Pass. Xiaohua nodded, yes, that's the place. If we can find Hanggu Pass, we should be able to find the reason why this saint disappeared. I don't think there is such a name in hidden immortal continent. Wen Chu shook his head, I've read the records in the immortal palace, but there is no record of this either. He. Reverend Yun laughed, not all Confucian saints are from hidden immortal continent, so this Hanggu Pass might not exist in hidden immortal continent. What does a missing saint have to do with us? Let's talk about it when we have the opportunity in the future. Fellow Taoist, you are right. Xiaohua nodded, let's cultivate in silence for now. After the sutra seeking of extreme bliss is over, Reverend Yun will take charge of the Fortune Palace, and we will go and see old man Gaochen's face. Good. Wen Chu clapped his hands, fellow immortal Lei Ting and I have always wanted to listen to the heavenly Tao and Karma talk. Let's part ways here. After saying that, Wen Chu and Reverend Lei Ting's figures swayed and entered the space, where they continued to cultivate and comprehend. Seeing the two leaving, Honorable Demon Shi and the others also bid farewell to Xiaohua and entered the space. Seeing his avatars cultivating, Xiaohua also sat cross-legged on a jade chair. He frowned as he looked at the gloomy sky outside the Fortune Tao Palace. A kind of confusion, a kind of worry, and a kind of homesickness quietly rose in him. A mountain range was like an old bull that had been working all day, lying on the ground and resting. It looked very heavy and majestic. The setting sun hung diagonally in the west, and rays of multicolored light spread across the sky. Today's dusk looked a little different from usual. Auspicious clouds hovered in the sky, and no matter how the wind urged them, they could not move their feet. A faint chanting sound was born in the wind. It was like the chanting of 100 suns, but also like the chanting of 10,000 Buddhas. Dang dang. In the sound of the wooden fish, there were also scattered starlight that couldn't help but scatter down first. Facing the blood-like light and shadow, a vigorous figure shook. This mountain range was naturally the Crouching Bull mountain range outside the immortal town. It was also the place where Xiao Hua, Lu Yi, Yuanya, and Xiao Jian passed by when he was forced to leave the immortal town. At this moment, a few more figures walked over from the darkened path. The one in the front was the fire ape, holding a magic wand in his hand. While walking, he shaded his eyes with his hand and looked forward. Behind him was a monk who seemed to be walking unsteadily. The monk looked tired, but his eyes were very bright, like stars in the night sky. Behind the monk was a weak white horse. On the horse's back was an incomparably huge pig. The pig was snoring with its head facing the sky. A fist-sized air bubble was expanding and shrinking in its nostrils as it snored. Behind the white horse was a Confucian cultivator wearing a battle robe. On his shoulder was a crescent moon shovel, and on the two ends of the crescent moon shovel were two huge bags. Wasn't this group of people Chun Zong and his disciple from the sutra seeking extreme bliss? Master. After turning around the mountain path, a small town appeared in front of them, and a long river flowed from one side of the town. Zhen Kong, who was in the front, put down his hand, turned around and walked a few steps, supporting the staggering Chun Zong, and said with a smile, "The immortal town is in front. Master, you only need to walk for another hour, and this sutra seeking extreme bliss will come to an end." Although Zhen Kong was smiling, his smile was a little stiff, and he even seemed a little nervous. However, the excitement in his voice came from the bottom of his heart. Of course, there was no surprise in this excitement. After all, he already knew through his divine sense that they would definitely reach the immortal town today. With Zhen Kong's support, Chuanzang stopped and let out a long sigh. He raised his hand again and wiped the sweat from his forehead. He turned to look at Zhen Kong and said, "Disciple, it's been hard on you along the way." "It's not hard at all." Zhen Kong waved his hands and said respectfully, "Disciple was naughty and mischievous before. If I didn't follow Master on this journey, how could I have comprehended Buddhism? Disciple's hard work was cultivation, and Disciple is very happy. Disciple was afraid that I didn't serve Master well enough. Amitabha, Buddha is merciful." Chunzang chanted Buddha's name and said, "The sea of bitterness is boundless, turn back, and the shore is at hand. Disciple, you were able to wake up and turn back in time. This is Buddha's great strength, and it has nothing to do with Master." "Yes, Amitabha, Buddha is merciful." Zhen Kong imitated Chunzang. He chanted Buddha's name, and he seemed to be doing it. "Humph, this fire ape really has a change in personality." On the white horse, Zhen Jia turned around and sat up. Dragon horse Zhen Feng didn't wait for Zhen Jia to raise his hand and immediately turned smaller so that Zhen Jia could sit more comfortably. However, Zhen Jia said coldly, "If I didn't see that you were exactly the same as the previous Zhen Kong and didn't see anything wrong, I would have thought that you were a fake Zhen Kong." "Amitabha, Zhen Jia." Chunzang reprimanded, "People change, let alone Zhen Kong who was under my Buddha's light. He followed Master for 300 years, so how could he not have Buddha nature? How could he not focus on Buddha? Focus on Buddha?" Zhen Jia punched Dragon Horse Zhen Feng's buttocks and said with a smile, "What about this scoundrel? He didn't come much later than Zhen Kong. Eldest senior brother, I am the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace's 10th prince." Dragon Horse Zhen Feng said with a bitter face, "There are still dozens of dragon maidens waiting for me to return and pamper them. If I were to become a monk, what would happen to them?" Chapter 46-32. Shut up. Zhen Jia roared, "Whether you enter Buddhism or not has nothing to do with me. If you interrupt me when I'm talking, do you believe that I'll castrate you? Even if you don't enter Buddhism, your group of dragon maidens won't care about you anymore." In an instant, Dragon Horse Zhen Feng gritted his teeth, not daring to make a single sound. "Amitabha." Chunzang chanted and bitterly smiled, "Zhen Jia, you clearly have Buddha in your heart. Why do you always pretend that you don't have Buddha in your mouth? That's right, master. It's fine as long as I have Buddha in my heart. Why do you care where I don't have Buddha? As Zhenjie spoke, he looked up at the sky and sneered, there are so many people here today. Let's go, master. Zhen Kong respectfully said, let's quicken our pace. The sun will set soon. Today is almost 300 years since Master left Longevity Town. Stepping into Longevity Town at sunset is the perfect time for my Buddha. All right. Hearing this, Chun Zong was motivated again. He struggled to get up and walked towards Longevity Town. As the sun set, Chun Zong and his disciple got closer to Longevity Town. When the afterglow of the setting sun disappeared, the entire land was shrouded in a thin layer of white. Chun Zong had 1 foot in Longevity Town. Boom! At the west side of Longevity Town, a huge Buddha lotus appeared out of thin air. The Buddha radiance shot out from the Buddha lotus, illuminating Longevity Town and Crouching Bull Mountain like the sun. Amitba, Amitba. Chants of Buddha resounded from the Buddha lotus. Dang, dang, dang. The sound of a wooden fish hitting the ground could be heard. Amidst the sounds, the Buddha lotus slowly bloomed, and 9 colors shot into the sky. Within the 9 colors, heavenly dragons danced, heavenly maidens bounced back, and heavenly flowers fell from the sky. Scenes of Buddhas in small kiliacosms were born and extinguished in the light. Namo Amitba. With a loud Buddhist chant, the Namo Dipankara archaic Buddha world exalted revealed his Buddha form from the void. In front of him, the Namo Wisdom Manjushri Bodhisattva placed his palms together with a smile on his face. Behind the Buddha and Bodhisattva, there seemed to be countless arhats, giants, and other Dharma protectors accompanying them. Boom! Just as the Western Buddha Lord appeared, a clear sound came from the eastern horizon. A colorful cloud covered the eastern sky, and thousands of auspicious signs hung on the 4 sides of the cloud. Auspicious signs surged, dragons and phoenixes appeared, and the sounds of students chanting resounded through the sky. Along with this chanting, fist-sized inscriptions appeared one after another, condensing into words, sentences, articles in midair, and finally turning into a mountain of books and a sea of words. With the appearance of the mountain of books and sea of literature, a majestic pillar of energy descended from the void. Amidst the vibrations, Immortal Emperor Go-Chin appeared on top of the 5-colored clouds with his emperor's robe and the emperor's sword hanging by his waist. As soon as Immortal Emperor Go-Chin appeared, a dragon-shaped providence rushed out from the Longevity Town and circled around Immortal Emperor Go-Chin a few times. Then, it turned into a seat and landed below him. As Immortal Emperor Go-Chin sat down, Tai Bai Jinxing, who held a horsetail whisk, and Sun Jian, who held a 3-pointed, double-edged saber appeared beside him. Around the clouds, the generals of the Sun Palace also appeared with their weapons in their hands. Boom! With the appearance of the Eastern Immortal Emperor, another loud rumble came from the north of the Longevity Town. At this time, the northern horizon was filled with stars, and countless pillars of light descended, shaking the entire sky. Under the stars and moon, 2 demon race great sages that were several thousand feet tall appeared. Weren't they the heaven-defying Thunder Phoenix and the Golden Rock? As soon as the 2 demon race great sages appeared, the starlight within 100 miles instantly gathered. Although they didn't bring any other demon race members, nor did they have the Immortal Palace or the Thunder Monastery ceremonial guards, the starlight was like an ocean, revolving around the 2 great sages' bodies in a profound manner. The majestic and boundless aura they exuded was comparable to the Immortal Palace and the Buddhist sect. Amitba. Greetings, benefactors. The Dipankara archaic Buddha placed his palms together and bowed. This emperor greets you as well. Immortal Emperor Go-Chin stood up from his seat and bowed. The Phoenix Sage and the Rock Sage transformed into their human forms and bowed as well. Greetings, everyone. After the Confucians, Buddhists, and demons of the 3 continents finished their greetings, Immortal Emperor Go-Chen spoke again. 300 years ago, we watched Xuanzang begin his Nirvana Sutra seeking. Now, 300 years later, we've personally come to the Longevity Town to welcome Xuanzang's triumphant return. 300 years have passed in the blink of an eye. TSK. The Golden Rock said with disdain, "Old man Go-Chen, stop showing off your literary talent. 300 years is merely 300 days to your immortal palace. Of course, you'd feel that it's only a blink of an eye." Ha! The immortal Emperor Go-Chen smiled and didn't mind. The Golden Rock looked at the Dipankara archaic Buddha world and mocked, "Old man Dipankara, where's Mahavarakana? I heard that he had a falling out with the Maitreya Buddha. Is he too ashamed to come to the Longevity Town?" Amitba. The Dipankara archaic Buddha world exalt placed his palms together and said with an expressionless face, "Rock sage, you're wrong. The Mahavarakana Buddha world exalt is currently comprehending the withering glory Buddhism and has no time to come. Moreover, the Mahavarakana Buddha world exalt is the current Buddha Lord. Ever since Xuanzang stepped into the Longevity Town, the Nirvana Sutra seeking had already become a thing of the past. Since the past has passed, it's only natural for me, the past Buddha Lord, to come and welcome him. Why is there a need for the current Buddha Lord to come? What are you talking about?" The rock sage waved his hand and said, "If that's the case, the Nirvana Sutra seeking is a thing of the past. However, the Buddha light illumination is a thing of the future. You should let the Maitreya Buddha come. Why didn't you let him come? Are you unable to order him around? Forget it, forget it." Immortal Emperor Go-Chen hurriedly tried to smooth things over. He smiled and said, "Today's main character is Xuanzang. He has walked for 300 years, and his merit has reached perfection." Boom! Before Immortal Emperor Go-Chen could finish his words, another thunderous boom resounded from the southern horizon of the Longevity Town. This thunderous boom was so loud that it shook the earth and the mountains. Then, a huge bolt of lightning flickered in the sky. Within the lightning, Xiaofan, who was dressed in a Taoist robe, walked over. Xiaohua's figure had already revealed itself. Within a radius of several hundred kilometers, lightning surged out like a tide. The thunderbolts within the lightning were like dancing dragons and spiraling phoenixes. Layers upon layers of life and death phenomena rushed out from the flickering thunderbolts, transforming into obscure fluctuations that were extremely mysterious as they spread out in all directions. Within the ripples, the Thunder Reverend, Wen Chu, and the heavenly being stepped out. As soon as the three of them appeared, another sky-piercing aura surged towards them. How can my fortune gate not participate in such a grand occasion? Xiaohua stood in midair and said proudly. "Greetings, Dragon Master Xiao." The golden-winged Great Peng did not dare to be negligent and saluted first. His posture was completely different from before. Feng Wu also smiled and bowed. "It has only been a few days. Greetings, fellow Taoist Xiao. Greetings, Sage Peng and Sage Feng. This Xiao greets you." Xiaohua smiled and bowed in return. "Oh, so it's Master Xiao." Immortal Emperor Go-Chen slapped his forehead and laughed. This emperor forgot that the Longevity Town is in Yu Province. Your soaring Dragon Mountain Range is also in Yu Province. Master Xiao should also come and observe the ceremony. Greetings, Immortal Emperor. Xiaohua looked at Immortal Emperor Go-Chen and said with a fake smile, "This Xiao has not seen Immortal Emperor for a few days. I miss you." AI, yes. Immortal Emperor Go-Chen's skin was unusually thick. He acted as if nothing had happened and said with a smile, "It has only been half a day since we parted at the southern heavenly gate. This emperor has already missed you. Master Xiao, why don't you stay in my immortal palace as well?" "That won't do." Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "This Xiao has no virtue and can't lead the scholars. If the immortal emperor is interested, why don't you invite the 4 great families to stay?" Huh, this emperor thinks so too. Immortal Emperor Go-Chen knew what Xiao Hua was talking about. Unfortunately, he still pretended not to know and said with a smile, "It's a pity that they feel that my immortal palace is too small to accommodate them." Greetings, Dipankara Archaic Buddha. Xiao Hua could not be bothered with Immortal Emperor Go-Chen and cupped his hands towards the Dipankara Archaic Buddha. This old monk greets Taoist Xiao. The Dipankara Archaic Buddha returned the greeting and said, "This old monk thanks Taoist for coming to the Longevity Town to observe the ceremony." Well said, well said. Seeing that the Dipankara Archaic Buddha didn't welcome him and spoke with a cold tone, Xiao Hua naturally knew that the Dipankara Archaic Buddha already knew about Zhenjia and Zhenkong's origins and even knew that he was good friends with the Maitreya Buddha. He was just casually saying this and was about to look at Chunzong. At this moment, the golden-winged great rock seemed to have noticed something and suddenly shouted, "Old man Go-Chen, isn't this scholar the owner of your immortal palace's literature palace? Why is he standing beside Taoist Xiao?" The golden-winged great rock was purposely making things difficult for Immortal Emperor Go-Chen. However, Immortal Emperor Go-Chen smiled and said, "The owner of the literature palace is good friends with Master Xiao. They want to find the heavenly punishment prison crystal that this emperor used to imprison Xian. Therefore, this emperor allowed the owner of the literature palace to help Master Xiao." Oh, Go-Chen, you're really heartless. Back then, the 9th princess only made a small mistake. Even now, you still haven't let her out? The golden-winged great rock laughed and said, "Is the 9th princess your biological daughter? Xian made a mistake and violated the immortal law. Even if she's my daughter, this emperor still has to punish her." Immortal Emperor Go-Chen said seriously, "This emperor will use virtue to conquer the world and rule the world." Your Majesty. At this moment, Taibai Jinxing, who was sitting in front of Immortal Emperor Go-Chen, suddenly appeared and bowed. "This old subject has something to say." Immortal Emperor Go-Chen was stunned. He looked at Taibai Jinxing and nodded, "Please speak." Taibai Jinxing smiled and said, "The 9th princess was originally in the wrong. After being imprisoned by your Majesty for hundreds of years, the suffering she suffered was already enough to make up for her previous sins. Moreover, this huge mistake has been made up for, and the 5 Qis unification art has reached perfection. In addition, today, Chunzong brought his disciples back to the Longevity Town, and the sutra seeking extreme happiness has also reached perfection. My immortal palace can be considered to have 2 simultaneous blessings. Today, this old subject boldly requests your Majesty to let the 9th princess out. Isn't this a good thing? Vote, vote, gift, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 46-33. Humph. Immortal Emperor Go-Chen snorted. Instead of looking at Taibai Jinxing, he looked at Xiao Hua and said coldly, "Although Xian's sins have been reduced, a few hundred years isn't enough for her to repent. Let's talk about this later." Oh? Taibai Jinxing was stunned. He looked at Immortal Emperor Go-Chen in confusion and hurriedly said respectfully, "Yes, I understand. I didn't think as thoroughly as your Majesty. I was wrong. Old Go-Chen." Xiao Hua was truly gnashing his teeth. Taibai Jinxing was good at guessing the emperor's will, so he must have seen something, or perhaps he received a hint from the empress. Thus, he used the grand occasion of sutra seeking in extreme bliss to ask Immortal Emperor Go-Chen to pardon Xian. However, Immortal Emperor Go-Chen obviously wanted to make things difficult for him, so he did not agree. Xiao Hua regretted his uninvited visit. However, just as he was cursing in his heart and was about to speak, he looked at the ground again. At this moment, Chunzong and the others were standing in the Longevity Town. The ground was already covered with yellow soil, and the streets were filled with clean water. They were looking at Xiao Hua and the others in a daze. Seeing the hardships on Chunzong's face, and even the fine lines at the corners of his eyes and the slight knife-like wrinkles between his brows, Xiaohua's heart ached. He instantly thought of the child in his mother's arms in front of Yellow Flower Ridge. His thoughts of competing with immortal Emperor Go Chen had already dissipated. Today's main character was Jiang Luer. From today onwards, he would have the time and strength to compete with Go Chen. "Chunzong, you've worked hard," Xiaohua said with a smile. Chunzong opened his mouth but didn't say anything. He nodded slightly towards Xiaohua and put his palms together before kneeling towards the Dipankara Archaic Buddha. Namo Amitabha, disciple Chunzong greets the Dipankara Archaic Buddha. 300 years ago, disciple obeyed my Buddha's decree and went to the Thunder Temple to obtain the Mahayana Buddhist scripture Sanzang. I have taken in 4 disciples along the way, namely Zhenkong, Zhenhan, Zhenfeng, and Zhenjie. Under the escort of these 4 disciples, I walked from the town of Longevity to the Thunderclap Temple, and from the Thunderclap Temple back to the town of Longevity. Throughout the journey, I have not used any of my powers and have relied solely on my own strength. I have completed my Buddha's decree and obtained the Sanzang Buddhist scripture to the town of Longevity. Now, I have submitted the decree to the Dipankara Archaic Buddha, the World Lord, for inspection. May my Buddha's light illuminate the hidden immortal continent. Amitabha. Seeing how Chuanzong ignored Xiaohua and immortal Emperor Go Chen and only kowtowed to him, the Dipankara Archaic Buddha smiled faintly and chanted, "Chuanzong, you've worked hard and contributed greatly. You've nourished the world with Buddhism essence like rain. However, if you want to talk about handing over the edict, it seems that you shouldn't hand it over here. You should hand it over at the place where you got it. The Buddhist edict. Amitabha, this disciple will follow the teachings of the Dipankara Archaic Buddha." Chuanzong came to a realization. After kowtowing, he stood up and looked at his disciples, who were only bowing respectfully, and said, "Disciples, follow your master to the River Tide Temple." "Yes, master." All the disciples answered carefully. Not to mention Zhenkong, even Zhenjie had restrained his wildness and covered most of his face with his 2 big ears. Not bad, not bad. Xiaohua didn't know what the others were thinking. However, seeing how Zhenkong's previous arrogance had disappeared, Xiaohua felt a little happy. While the heaven-pacifying staff wasn't as heaven-defying as the 5 elements wishful heaven-reaching staff, it was still a powerful weapon. Xiaohua didn't want to let a fire ape, who had a murderous heart, use it to create trouble for himself. Seeing how Zhenkong was behaving, Xiaohua started making plans. Zhenkong is a fire ape. It isn't appropriate for him to become a disciple of Yuanya. After Zhenkong obtains the Buddha fruit, I'll let him enter my fortune gate. Chuanzong measured his final merit step by step. With the Buddhists, Taoists, Confucians, and demons guarding the Longevity town, there probably wasn't anyone in this world who could stop the final step of the sutra seeking extreme bliss. However, right at this moment, in the south, where Xiaohua came from, another rumbling sound resounded. From the horizon, a rainbow bridge several miles long rushed over from the darkened sky. This rainbow bridge was different from the usual ones as it was black and white. Every time the black and white rainbow bridge rushed over the horizon, a chi explosion would occur. The chi explosion was continuous like the beating of a drum. When the rainbow bridge got closer, 3 cultivators appeared on the rainbow bridge. The one in front was dressed in emperor's attire and wore a dark yellow crown on his head. Of the 2 cultivators behind him, the one on the left was dressed in a bright yellow Taoist robe with a feathered crown on his head. He had a tall stature and an ancient face, and he held a 5-colored jade scepter in his hand. The one on the right was dressed in a dark yellow Taoist robe. He had snow-white hair, and his eyes were like lightning. He had an arrogant expression on his face, and his hands were placed behind his back. He was like a shadow following behind the emperor-attired cultivator. This person patted his head, and 2 black and white light pillars shot into the sky. A huge black and white dome appeared in the sky, and the aura of a supreme cultivator surged towards the longevity town like a tsunami. Oh! Why is it him? The Gochen Immortal Emperor, the golden-winged Great Rock, and the Dipankara archaic Buddha were puzzled. They didn't know when a supreme cultivator had appeared in the hidden immortal mainland. When the cultivator in front revealed himself, the three of them were shocked. They looked at each other and had the same thought. Xiaohua looked at the newcomer coldly. This face and aura were the same as the one he saw in the light projection when he came out of the Star Moon Palace. Now that he saw the black and white light pillar, how could Xiaohua not know that this was the primordial chaos ancestor? However, Xiaohua and the Gochen Immortal Emperor were equally shocked. When others entered the Star Moon Palace, they would only have the opportunity to become a literary saint. This primordial chaos ancestor, on the other hand, had directly reached the Mahayana realm. Moreover, looking at his body, he must have obtained the opportunity in the Star Moon Palace. This guy's luck is pretty good. Xiaohua curled his lips and muttered, even this old man is jealous of him. When he looked at the primordial chaos ancestor and saw the shocked expressions on the experts' faces, he felt proud of himself. In his heart, he was the one who had benefited the most from this trip to the Star Moon Palace. Damn it! Before the primordial chaos ancestor could speak, the Gochen Immortal Emperor glared at the cultivator in the bright yellow Daoist robe and said, Daoist Rider Crane, you left the Penglai Immortal Realm without permission and violated the Immortal Palace's laws. How dare you appear before me? Daoist Rider Crane? Xiaohua rolled his eyes and immediately understood that the cultivator holding the Jade Scepter was the Daoist Rider Crane from the Lianghui Ridge who was ranked second on the Xianhuang list. His cultivation had already reached the mid-stage of the tribulation passing stage and was indeed more powerful than Xiaohua's disciples. He was qualified to occupy the second position. After hearing the Gochen Immortal Emperor's reprimand, Daoist Rider Crane's gaze swept across indifferently. He did not even have the interest to open his mouth and immediately closed his eyes again. Gochen. The primordial chaos ancestor in front laughed and said, although your Penglai Immortal Realm is called an immortal realm, it's actually a prison that imprisons the experts of our Taoism. If not for the fear of being hunted down by the Immortal Palace, who would be willing to stay in there? Who in the sky-bearing palace would be afraid of your Immortal Palace? Just wait and see, other than Daoist Rider Crane, there will be more Taoism cultivators who will leave the Penglai Immortal Realm and join my sky-bearing palace. The Gochen Immortal Emperor's face flashed with brilliance and said coldly, if that's the case, then I'll cut the weeds and eliminate the roots to avoid future troubles. Is that so? Since you have such thoughts, then please. The primordial chaos ancestor displayed his unscrupulous nature and laughed, go ahead and attack. The more you kill, the more they will submit to me. The Gochen Immortal Emperor glanced at Xiaohua and laughed, if it was in the past, your sky-bearing palace might be their only choice. But now? From what I see, the Fortune Gate is my Immortal Palace's only strong opponent. The sky-bearing palace that you just built is not even comparable to a single hair of the Fortune Gate. Old man Gochen. The primordial chaos ancestor laughed loudly. He looked at Xiaohua and said, don't show off such childish tricks here. The sowing discord in your words is too strong. It's not worthy of your identity as an immortal emperor. This old man has seen Daoist Xiao before and also saw the blood steel of his Taoism in the Bronze Pillar country. This old man is very gratified. After this old man was suppressed, my Taoism has risen again. The special thing is that Daoist Xiao's cultivation far surpasses this old man's, and his Fortune Gate is famous in the 3 continents. It is also the flag of my Taoism. If possible, this old man is willing to cooperate with the Fortune Gate with my sky-bearing palace. For the glory of my Taoism, this old man is willing to make any sacrifice. This old man is willing to fight against the immortals and Buddhas to the end, even if I am suppressed again. The primordial chaos ancestor's words were very passionate, but Xiaohua felt that it was a joke. If the primordial chaos ancestor was willing to make sacrifices, why would he need to build the sky-bearing palace? However, the current Xiaohua was not the Xiaohua of the past. He laughed and said, "Daoist primordial chaos ancestor, this Xiao's thoughts are different from yours. This Xiao believes that whether it is the Confucian cultivators, the Buddhist sect, the Taoism, or even the demon race, they are all ants under the heavenly Tao. They are all cultivators who cultivate for their own goals. Our enemies are the heavens, the earth, and the heavenly Tao. Not each other. If you put yourself in a position of opposition to the Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect, wouldn't the Taoism be the mortal enemy of the Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect? How can my Taoism prosper?" The primordial chaos ancestor's face turned ugly, and he frowned and said, "Daoist Xiao, have you not heard of the saying, people who walk different paths cannot work together? My Taoism's cultivation is different from that of the Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect. How can we coexist? It is precisely because they are different that we can coexist." Xiaohua said curiously, "If there is competition, then it will not be easy to coexist. Moreover." Speaking until here, Xiaohua looked at the Scholar Palace beside him and smiled. This is the Scholar Palace's master, and also this Xiao's good friend. When we cultivate, we often verify what we have learned with each other. The Taoism and Confucian cultivators are actually interconnected in many areas. Only by referring to each other can we improve together. Chapter 46-34. Humph. While Xiaohua was speaking, another cultivator wearing a black Taoist robe coldly snorted and said, "Taoist Master Zhao's cultivation is profound. Aside from the Grand Mist Ancestor, this Taoist is half a person that I admire the most. However, Taoist Xiao. Now that he's the lightning master of the immortal palace, I don't even admire him anymore." Then, the cultivator said to the Grand Mist Ancestor, "Sect Master, I don't have any objections if you want to cooperate with any of our Taoism's cultivators. However, if you want to cooperate with those Taoist sects, I'll be the first to object." The Grand Mist Ancestor frowned and scolded, "Dark Knight, Taoist Xiao is our Taoism's Grand Ascension Stage Taoism. His fortune gate defeated the four great families. How could he be? There are many people in this world who would forsake their principles for beauty." The cultivator called Dark Knight replied bluntly, "Who knows what Taoist Xiao would do for the North Star's 9th princess? Dark Knight of the incinerating glass pond? Third on the profound yellow list." When Xiaohua heard the Grand Mist Ancestor's words, he understood the origin of this cultivator. Looking at Anya, Xiaohua understood that the Grand Mist Ancestor and the others had already discussed these words beforehand. However, when Xiaohua looked around, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In front of the Confucian cultivators, the Buddhist sect, and the demon race, the most unpromising Tao sect, and the sky-bearing palace, which had just been established, actually dared to boast shamelessly. Amitabha. At this moment, the Dipankara archaic Buddha spoke with a bitter expression on his face, "Amitabha. Amitabha, you have been cultivating peacefully in the Pure Land world's incineration glass pond for so many years. Our Buddhism sect has never disturbed you. Isn't it good for you to cultivate in peace?" "Why?" Dipankara. Dark Knight said coldly, "I have been cultivating in the incinerating glass pond for so many years. Indeed, I've been doing much better than those Taoism cultivators in the hidden immortal continent. However, I can't say that I've been peacefully. From time to time, the heavenly guardian of the Thunder Sound Temple would come to check on I to see if I was quiet. Whenever I was not at the burning glass pond, he would immediately warn me to cultivate in the burning glass pond, quietly. Even if the guardian heavenly king of the Thunder Sound Temple did not come, the monks from the nearby temples would still come to visit. Whether it was spiritual wine or spiritual pills, would have to serve them well. I was a Taoist cultivator of the 8th grade of essence force. Even when facing a monk who had formed his nascent soul, I still had to put on a smiling face. How can I cultivate in peace? Amitabha. Excellent, excellent. The Dipankara archaic Buddha world lord chanted Buddha's name. He looked at the river-tide temple and saw Chunjing holding his monk's staff. He steadied himself and stepped into the temple, saying, I hope the Buddhist light of the sutra praying nirvana can illuminate benefactor's heart and let benefactor see the true compassion of my Buddhism towards the world. I have no interest in Buddhism's compassion. Dark Knight snorted and said, my sect master is the true prodigy who is well versed in both the past and the present. Not to mention that no Taoist cultivator can compare to him, even among Confucian cultivators, it would be hard to find a match for him. Therefore, I feel that my sect master is the best candidate to lead all Taoism under the heavens. Only his great talent and bold vision could truly bring the Taoist sect to glory. Not those who are secretly colluding with Confucian cultivators. In the end, Dark Knight's words were all directed at Xiaohua. Hearing this, Xiaohua sneered, anger rising in his chest. However, today was the day of Chunjing's accomplishment. Xiaohua couldn't disturb him casually. Moreover, in front of the Immortal Palace, Buddhism, and Great Sage Hall, how could Xiaohua let them laugh at Taoism's internal strife? Looking at the Grand Mist Ancestor's smiling face, Xiaohua didn't understand what he meant. After all, they hadn't talked about cooperation yet. There wasn't a need to be so hostile, right? However, all of a sudden, Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat as if he had thought of something. He sighed inwardly, sigh, this Grand Mist Ancestor is too scheming. In order to make this Xiao not suspect the Xiao Empire, he's actually bluffing here, making this Xiaohua worry that he'll force me to focus my attention here while he secretly makes a move there. How could he know that this Xiaohua has long known that Prince Lan? Ignorant child, Immortal Emperor Gochen didn't mind the small matter and said coldly, what do you know? How can someone who can be called Thunder Master by my immortal palace be an ordinary cultivator? That Grand Mist brat is only a clown suppressed in the Yin-Yang Illustrated Handbook. How can he be compared to Thunder Master Xiao? Amitabha. The Dipankara archaic Buddha world lord said, Grand Mist Ancestor, are you here to observe the Longevity Town ceremony? If so, my Thunder Sound Temple welcomes you. If not, my Thunder Sound Temple doesn't welcome you, please leave. No. The Grand Mist Ancestor smiled, I'm not here to observe the Longevity Town ceremony. Then please leave. The Dipankara archaic Buddha world lord said calmly, otherwise, I won't hold back anymore. I'm here to observe the hidden immortal continent's first golden body Buddha statue's consecration. The Grand Mist Ancestor wasn't nervous at all. Instead, he replied word by word. In an instant, the joyous atmosphere became tense. No matter if it was the Dipankara archaic Buddha world lord or the immortal Emperor Gochen, both of them had an awkward expression on their faces. Although the Sutra Seeking of Nirvana was a joint venture between the Immortal Palace and the Thunder Sound Temple, Chuanzang could preach in the hidden immortal continent, and Zhenhan could preach Confucianism in the pure paradise world. Today's Sutra Seeking of Nirvana was a joint event between the Immortal Palace and the Thunder Sound Temple. However, the biggest winner of the Sutra Seeking of Nirvana was the Thunder Sound Temple. After the Sutra Seeking of Nirvana was completed, the hidden immortal continent's first golden body Buddha statue could be consecrated and receive the worship of thousands of kind-hearted men and women. The Thunder Sound Temple could also preach Mahayana Buddhist scriptures in the hidden immortal continent. If the Dipankara archaic Buddha world lord didn't mention this matter, the immortal Emperor Gochen wouldn't mention it as well. If the Grand Mist Ancestor didn't mention it, everyone would just consecrate the Nanwu Great Merciful Buddha World Sound Bodhisattva's golden body without a single word. Now that the Grand Mist Ancestor had spoken, he had exposed the scar that no one wanted to talk about. Moreover, he had even sowed discord between the seemingly harmonious Confucianism and Buddhism. Fortunately, at this moment, chants of Namo Maitreya Buddha, Namo Amitabha Buddha, Namo Dipankara Archaic Buddha. Amidst the chants of Buddhist mantras, heavenly flowers sprinkled down from the night sky, and countless heavenly maidens flew out gracefully amidst the starlight. Rings of dazzling Buddhist radiances resembled the rising sun, sprinkling all around the longevity town. This phenomenon instantly attracted everyone's attention. Chunzang stepped into the river tide temple, and lotuses bloomed with every step he took. When he entered the Great Strength Hall and arrived before the Buddhist shrine, the radiance reached its peak, and the entire Great Strength Hall disappeared. It was as if the entire sky was filled with Buddhist radiances and lotuses. All of the Buddhist radiances and lotuses condensed into a Buddha's golden body. Pious and kind faces of men and women were revealed within the Buddhist radiances, and everyone was chanting, Amitabha Buddha. Chunzang's expression was unusually calm, and he didn't show any signs of agitation. His eyes were filled with Sanskrit words. Strangely, although his gaze landed on the Buddhist shrine, it seemed like he was looking at the Buddha's golden body. In such a strange situation, the unruly Zhen Kong and the unruly Zhen Jia were also very careful. They didn't dare to step into the Great Strength Hall, and only stood outside the hall, carefully watching. Chunzang respectfully walked to the front of the Buddhist shrine, and carefully took out the Buddhist decree from his chest. He gently flicked the old yellow decree that didn't have any dust on it, and then knelt in front of the Buddhist shrine. He kowtowed 9 times and chanted, Amitabha Buddha, disciple Chunzang was fortunate enough to not disappoint you. After 300 years, disciple returned and brought the Thunder Temple's Mahayana Sanzang to the hidden immortal continent. Today, disciple will present the Buddhist decree to Buddha. Chunzang respectfully presented the Buddhist decree, but before it could be sent into the shrine, boom! Another blazing sun appeared between the eyebrows of the previous Buddha statue. The Buddhist light from the blazing sun fell on the Buddhist decree, and the Buddhist decree turned into millions of small worlds. These small worlds were like a tide, and they hovered above Chunzang, Zhen Kong, Zhen Jia, Zhen Feng, and Zhen Han. A vast voice filled with mercy sounded in everyone's ears, Chunzang has completed the Sutra of Bliss, and has benefited the good people of the hidden immortal continent. He is bestowed with millions of merits, and has become the Xuanji meritorious Buddha. As the voice fell, more than half of the small worlds flowed towards Chunzang like a river. Whoosh! With a soft sound, a ray of light appeared behind Chunzang's head, and the Buddhist light swept the small worlds into it. In an instant, the Buddhist light shone brightly again, and the Sanskrit chant sounded again. Although Zhen Kong is a demon, he wholeheartedly protected Chunzang's Sutra of Bliss, and along the way, he eliminated demons and subdued demons, and has made great contributions. He is bestowed with millions of merits, and has become the vanquishing demon Buddha. Similarly, the Buddhist light swept the remaining half of the small worlds into the back of Zhen Kong's head, and the same ray of light appeared, and the Sanskrit chant sounded again. Oh! Seeing this, Xiaofan was overjoyed, and he almost clapped his hands and praised in his heart, the Mahavairocana revered Buddha is fair. Yuan Tong Tian was the first to escort Jiang Luer, and he contributed the most along the way. In my opinion, the Mahavairocana revered Buddha gave him the title of Arhat, but who would have thought that he would actually give him a Buddhist position? How rare! Immediately after, the Buddhist decree came again, and Zhen Jia became the heaven-vigilant Arhat Buddha fruit, Zhen Han became the benevolent Vajra Buddha fruit, even the laziest dragon horse Zhen Feng became the 8th-division heavenly dragon Buddha fruit. Naturally, Zhen Feng, who became the 8th-division heavenly dragon, also shed his dragon horse skin and appeared as a true dragon. Regarding this result, Zhen Jia didn't have any objections. Although he was the strongest, he came late, and Zhen Kong had already protected Chunzang for most of the journey. Thus, after Chunzang and the others received the Buddhist decree, they all knelt down and kowtowed, saying, "This disciple thanks the Buddhist Lord for his mercy. Give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and reward it." Thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 46-35. Boom boom boom. Bursts of Buddhist aura surged, and the huge golden Buddha statue turned into a huge Buddhist lotus, and in another moment, the huge Buddhist lotus turned into hundreds of millions of even smaller Buddhist lotuses, rushed into the night sky, and disappeared in all directions of the hidden immortal continent. Amitabha. The Dipankara archaic Buddha world lord saw the Buddhist lotus vanish, and the tidal current temple reappeared in the night sky. He pressed his palms together and said, "Your Majesty, today is a joyous occasion for my Thunder Sound Temple and the Immortal Palace. Can you work together with me to take down the mortal world object that is obstructing the sound of Namo Great Compassion and allow me to consecrate the first Buddha statue in the hidden immortal continent?" Immortal Emperor Gaochen squinted his eyes. According to their previous discussion, there was no such thing. After the Mahavairakana world lord's Buddhist decree bestowed upon Xuanzang, the Dipankara archaic Buddha should consecrate Nanwu Merciful Guanyin. Immortal Emperor Gaochen didn't have to do anything, nor did he have to say anything. Perhaps, the Dipankara archaic Buddha's world lord thought of doing something unnecessary because of the primordial chaos ancestor's words. Immortal Emperor Gaochen wanted to reject it. However, the Dipankara archaic Buddha world's words were so righteous that Immortal Emperor Gaochen couldn't think of any reason to reject it. Seeing that the Dipankara archaic Buddha world had already landed in front of the golden Buddha statue, Immortal Emperor Gaochen could only follow suit. Rise. The Gaochen Immortal Emperor and the Dipankara archaic Buddha looked at each other and waved their hands at the same time. The silk cloth had already been removed from Namo Great Merciful Guanyin's Buddha statue. In the night, the 99 zhang tall Buddha statue was finally revealed. The benevolent appearance of the Buddha statue caused Xiaofan to sigh with emotion in his heart. The real and fake Ci Hang were all appearances. The real Guanyin Bodhisattva was the real one. Namo Dipankara archaic Buddha. The Dipankara archaic Buddha world lord chanted and said, "In my name, I erect the statue of my Buddhism. Namo Great Merciful Guanyin Bodhisattva's golden body shall emit Buddhist radiance. May the benevolence of my Buddha be gathered on Guanyin's body, and save millions of Buddhists." As he spoke, the Dipankara archaic Buddha world lord raised his right hand, and pressed his thumb, a dazzling Buddha seal, from head to toe, the golden Buddha statue. The Buddha's radiance was different from the previous Buddha statue. First, the Buddha's radiance from head to toe, golden body, from head to toe of the Buddha's radiance of the Buddha's Buddha statue, forming a huge funnel of Buddha. The of Buddha's of Buddha was of Guanyin's Guanyin the world. The Dipankara archaic Buddha was a little surprised to see how different the consecration this time was. However, when he saw the Buddha statue's translucent Buddha radiance and the power of faith descending upon it, the Buddha statue became even more lifelike. Only then did he relax and clasped his palms together. Excellent, excellent. With the power of Buddha, it's time to deliver all living beings from torment. However, before his Buddha fire could land on the ground, an extremely profound fluctuation was emitted from the Buddha statue, which was brimming with the power of faith. As soon as this fluctuation was emitted, it transcended space and landed on Xiaohua's body. As this fluctuation descended, the surging power of faith changed its direction and landed on Xiaohua's head. Then, Namo Dipankara archaic Buddha. Namo Amitabha Buddha. Namo Maitreya Buddha. A series of Buddhist chants resounded, and the power of faith poured into Xiaohua's head. Buddhas of Buddha radiance shone from Xiaohua's body once again, and Sanskrit chants resounded once more. Another phenomenon of Buddha fruit appeared under everyone's astonishment. Not good. As soon as the fluctuation was emitted, Xiaohua could already feel the crystalline Godhead in his mind trembling slightly. His expression immediately changed, and he knew that something had happened. Unfortunately, before he could activate any abilities, the fluctuation had already landed on his crystalline godhead and triggered the Buddha fruit. However, Xiaohua's of Buddha fruit was different from the Namo wisdom Manjushri Bodhisattva. No radiance appeared behind Xiaohua's head, and the endless power of faith simply disappeared after landing on the back of his head. This is... Not only was the Dipankara archaic Buddha shocked, but even the golden-winged great rock, immortal Emperor Go-Chen, and the primordial mist ancestor were shocked. The primordial mist ancestor even felt a hint of joy in his heart, thinking that this was the Buddhism sect's secret move. Boom! As the fluctuation landed on the crystalline godhead flickered with a faint golden radiance. As soon as the golden radiance appeared, the fluctuation changed again and quickly shrunk back. At the same time, the Buddha light on the Buddha statue's golden body emitted a chaotic sound, and an even brighter Buddha light surged upwards. When the golden radiance dissipated, everyone's gaze landed on the Buddha statue's face, and they were all dumbfounded. This was because the Namo wisdom Manjushri Bodhisattva's appearance was no different from Xiaohua's. The primordial mist ancestor even turned his head to look at Xiaohua, then at the Buddha statue's golden body, and then at Xiaohua again. His head spun like a rattle drum. This. The Dipankara archaic Buddha opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say. He even forgot to recite the Buddha's name. I understand now. The gloomy immortal Emperor Go-Chen was the first to come to his senses. He clapped his hands and laughed. That benevolent Hang who stopped the heavenly cave river dragon race in the longevity town and used a Buddhist artifact to collect the Liao River's water was actually Thunder Master Zhao's transformation. No wonder Thunder Master Xiao wasn't there when benevolent Hang appeared, and Thunder Master Xiao only appeared after benevolent Hang left. Congratulations Thunder Master Xiao, congratulations Thunder Sound Temple. The immortal Emperor Go-Chen had vented his anger. He was forced by the Thunder Sound Temple to use the sutra seeking extreme bliss. However, the Thunder Sound Temple had calculated everything, and it ended up benefiting Xiaohua. Although the immortal Emperor Go-Chen didn't gain anything, the Thunder Sound Temple had lost a lot. How could he not be happy? Amitabha. The Namo wisdom Manjushri Bodhisattva hurriedly said, "This Buddha statue's golden body isn't mine." Strange. The golden-winged great rock laughed, "Little monk, didn't you see the power of faith in the hidden immortal continent? Didn't it all fall into Taoist Zhao's body? Doesn't this mean that he is the real Namo great compassionate Guanyin Bodhisattva? It doesn't matter if he is a Buddha or not, as long as he is the Guanyin Bodhisattva of all living Buddhas. Oh, this saint still remembers your Buddha saying, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Taoist Xiao has a Buddhist heart, so why do you care if he is a Buddha or not? Also, the immortal Emperor Go-Chen added fuel to the fire. My immortal palace recognizes this Buddha statue's golden body. As for the appearance of this Buddha statue, my immortal palace doesn't care. If your Buddhist sect changes the Buddha statue's golden body again, you can only use the sutra seeking extreme bliss again. The Grand Mist Ancestor's expression was complicated. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but when he looked at the Taoist rider crane and the Dark Night Child, he didn't know what to say. The truth that Xiaohua was the Namo great compassionate Guanyin Bodhisattva was the biggest and most laughable secret they had ever seen in their lives. Namo Amitabha. Seeing the power of faith continuously entering Xiaohua's body, the Dipankara archaic Buddha's benevolent expression on the Buddha statue's golden body was vivid and lifelike. Thinking about Xiaohua, the Dipankara archaic Buddha immediately made a decision. He politely put his palms together and bowed to Xiaohua. Congratulations to the Guanyin Bodhisattva for achieving the Buddha fruit. Namo Amitabha. Namo Great Wisdom Manjushri Bodhisattva also stepped forward and bowed. Manjushri greets senior apprentice brother Guanyin. This. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If Xiaohua hadn't cultivated to the Mahayana realm, he wouldn't mind becoming the Guanyin Bodhisattva. However, now that he was a Taoism supreme cultivator, he didn't care about the Buddha fruit. However, he had done a lot of good deeds, and when the Buddha statue's golden body was consecrated, he finally achieved the Bodhisattva Buddha fruit. Amitabha. Xiao Hua was quite familiar with Buddhism's etiquette. He raised his hand and helped the Namo Great Wisdom Manjushri Bodhisattva up. You and I are old acquaintances. There's no need to be so polite. Senior apprentice brother has just attained the Buddha fruit. You can go with the Buddha of Xuanji merit and the victorious devil vanquishing Buddha to the Thunder Sound Temple to meet the Mahavairakana World Lord. Namo Great Wisdom Manjushri Bodhisattva smiled. Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand. Forget it, forget it. I won't be going to the Thunder Sound Temple. At this moment, a voice filled with joy and determination said, Amitabha, Dipankara Archaic Buddha, I won't be going to the Thunder Sound Temple either. I'll be going to the west to seek scriptures. Although this voice wasn't loud, the Buddha lights that had disappeared immediately surged out once again and covered the entire Longevity town. This time, the Buddha lights were slightly different from before. Each Buddha light condensed into a tiny Buddha lotus, and on each lotus sat a smiling Buddha. The Buddha's face couldn't be seen clearly, and the grade of the lotus was unknown. The Buddha Lord's Great Wish? This is the Buddha Lord's Great Wish. It's comparable to the Namo Great Wish, the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's Great Wish. Seeing such a Buddha light phenomenon, Xiao Hua was stunned. Like everyone else, he focused his attention on the source of this voice. It came from Chuanzang, who had just attained the 4 stars meritorious Buddha fruit. Everyone, the demons, and the Buddhas were all shocked. An indescribable feeling arose in their hearts, and they almost blurted it out, What's going on? Is today destined to be recorded in the annals of the 3 continents? Everyone knew that Xiao Hua wouldn't go to the Thunder Monastery. Not to mention that a Taoist Mahayana realm cultivator entering the Thunder Monastery was equivalent to handing his life to the Vairocana world sovereign. Just the fact that Xiao Hua had ambushed the Buddhist sect in the Longevity town made him too embarrassed to appear in front of the Vairocana world sovereign. But what was Chuanzang the Buddha of Xuanji meritorious virtue up to? What was he up to this time? Chapter 46-36. Namo Wisdom Manjushri looked at the astonished Namo Dipankara Archaic Buddha and said, Amitabha, Xuanji meritorious Buddha, if you want to preach the Sanzang Buddhist scriptures in the Longevity town and save all living beings, it's fine if you don't go to the Thunder Sound Temple to listen to the Revered One's teachings. If the Revered One knows about it, not only will he not punish you, he will even reward you. But you've already brought the Sanzang Mahayana Buddhist scriptures to the hidden immortal continent. You still want to go to the West to seek scriptures? Where is the West? The scriptures you seek. What scriptures are they? In this world, other than the Thunder Sound Temple, what other scriptures are worth seeking? The Xuanji meritorious Buddha, Chuanzang, put his palms together and replied calmly, Namo Amitabha, Dipankara Archaic Buddha, the Revered One, and Namo Wisdom Manjushri, please know that when I was still a child, I entered Nirvana for many years. When I entered Nirvana, I saw the Western Paradise. I clearly remember that when I entered Nirvana, I walked towards the West for hundreds of years. That's the true origin of my Buddhism, where my Buddhism's true intent lies. Oh no, this is bad. After hearing Chuanzang's words, Xiao Hua recalled what Wang Bianfei said when he came out from the space, that little monk wants to head towards the Western Paradise. He has been trekking for hundreds of years. Xiao Hua unwittingly came to a realization as he thought to himself, Wang Bianfei has already mentioned this matter previously. Although Jiang Luer in the space has entered Nirvana, he must have seen the immortal herbs and other things in the space and thought that this was the Pure Land. And the place where I imprisoned him just so happened to be the east side of the Shenhua continent. He must be heading towards where those immortal herbs are. But how can I explain it to him? Why don't I wait for him to start seeking scriptures, then I'll use the Kunlun mirror to explain it to him. Namo Wisdom Manjushri was speechless. He was a bodhisattva, which was lower than Chuanzang Xuanji meritorious Buddha. Thus, he couldn't criticize Chuanzang in front of everyone. Namo Dipankara archaic Buddha's face was enraged. He looked at Chuanzang, then at Zhenkong, and scolded, You have wasted the revered one's care. Chuanzang was extremely confused. He looked at Zhenkong, not understanding what the Dipankara archaic Buddha was saying. Amitabha, at this moment, Zhenkong stepped forward and respectfully kneeled on the ground, and kowtowed, Buddha, I have a great ambition to find the true Buddha scriptures and will, and spread my Buddha's light throughout the world. I've also decided that I'm willing to follow the Buddha of Xuanji math virtue to the west and continue to seek scriptures. Let's go together, let's go together. Zhenjia saw this and jumped out as well. Its big ears flapped as it shouted, the Thunder Temple is really stingy. They only gave me the Buddha fruit of a heaven-vigilant arhat. They really let me down. I want to follow my master to the west and get myself a Buddha Lord identity. He didn't expect Yuan Tong Tian to be so benevolent. Not only did Yuan Tong Tian keep his orders in mind, but he also wanted to follow Jiang Luer and protect her. Seeing Buddha. Immortal Emperor Gaochen smiled and looked at Zhen Han and Dragon Horse Zhen Feng. Unfortunately, Dragon Horse Zhen Han and Dragon Horse Zhen Han were confused. They looked at each other and didn't step forward. Clearly, they didn't know about this. Evil creature. The Dipankara archaic Buddha World Lord scolded, which he rarely did. Buddhist lights flashed all around him. There is only one Thunder Sound monastery in this world, and only one Mahavarakana World Lord. Where are the true Buddhist scriptures? Where are the true Buddha Lord's Buddhist lights? The Great Snow Mountain Small Exquisite Temple. Immortal Emperor Gaochen laughed. Namo Maitreya Buddha is the future Buddha Lord. He naturally has the true Buddha scriptures and the Buddha's Buddha light. The Xuanji Maitreya Buddha, Chuanzang, raised his head and looked towards the west. It was still pitch black, and there were only specks of starlight hanging in the sky, guiding the people in the night. Chuanzang said, Amitabha. Benefactor, you're wrong. Disciple isn't going to the Great Snow Mountain or the Blessed Lands. Disciple is going to the west, cross the West Sea, and head towards the abyss of the West Sea. There is my Buddha light. Boom. Chuanzang's words were like a clap of thunder, stunning Xiaohua. He looked at Chuanzang in disbelief and thought, West, the abyss of the West Sea. Isn't it just the Maitreya Sea? Isn't that where I came from? What is the Maitreya Sea? Isn't it just the Dawn Rain Continent? What is there in the Dawn Rain Continent? Isn't it just the ruins of Buddhism? Could it be that Lu knows about the ruins of Buddhism in the Dawn Rain Continent? Impossible. Lu was only a few years old when he entered Serenity. How could he know about the ruins of Buddhism? At that time, let alone senior sister, even I didn't know about the ruins of Buddhism, right? Thinking of this, Xiaohua thought of the day when Buddha Bodhi obtained the Buddha fruit of Namo Maitreya. Lu was the reincarnation of the future Buddha Lord. When he came here, he actually abandoned the position of Buddha Lord. The future Buddha Lord, one of the three great Buddha Lords of Buddhism, has a very high status. If there was no special reason, how could he give it up? That ball of golden light. Thinking of this, Xiaohua understood. It's that ball of golden light. It must be the words that the reincarnated Buddha Maitreya left for the reincarnated Jiang Luer. That day, Lu entered Serenity and headed west. It looked like he was heading towards the center of Xinhua continent, but in fact, he was heading west. At that time, although he didn't obtain the golden light, he already had a long-cherished wish in his heart, which was to head west. Oh my, Jiang Luer, my nephew. I'm afraid his background is not small. Bah, of course his background is not small. He is one of the 3 great Buddha lords of Buddhism. But Xiao Hua was still confused. Is there anything more noble than the future Buddha Lord of Buddhism in this world? He actually made Jing Luer give up the position of the future Buddha Lord? Maitreya Buddha. Xiao Hua suddenly thought of something. This guy must know something. Otherwise, how could he fall out with the Mahavarakana Buddha Lord as soon as he entered Lane Temple? There must be something fishy about this. Forget it, this is a matter of Buddhism. Why should I worry about it? If Lu wants to go, then go. There is only sea water in the West Sea. The so-called space passage is smaller than finding a needle in a haystack. If he didn't know where it is, even with the Mahavarakana Buddha Lord's divine sense, he wouldn't be able to find it. Lu is just some Buddha of Xuanji merit. What ability does he have to return to Xiaoyu continent? Besides, if he could find the way back, wouldn't I be able to return as well? While Xiao Hua was pondering, the Dipankara archaic Buddha Lord's shocked expression gradually faded away. He looked at the great aspiration Buddha lotuses that filled the sky and gradually disappeared into the void. He put his palms together and chanted, Amitabha Buddha. Evil fate, evil fate. Buddha of Xuanji merit, victorious devil-slaying Buddha. This matter is of great importance. I must report it to the Mahavarakana Buddha Lord. Amitabha Buddha. The victorious devil-slaying Buddha Zhenkong said, this matter has nothing to do with my Buddha. It's fine if you don't report it. Xiao Hua couldn't help but laugh at Zhenkong's straightforward rejection. He raised his hand and pointed, Zhenkong, come here. The victorious devil-slaying Buddha hesitated for a moment. He walked in front of Xiao Hua and smiled, Taoist Xiao, this junior is here. Xiao Hua smiled, you have already attained Buddhism. You don't have to call yourself a junior anymore. This junior will always remember Taoist's guidance. The victorious devil-slaying Buddha said respectfully, Taoist will always be this junior's benefactor. N. Xiao Hua smiled faintly, very satisfied with the victorious devil-slaying Buddha's respect. He raised his hand and took out the wishful scepter, saying, of course, this Xiao has already made it clear on the great snow mountain. After you finish praying in bliss, this wishful scepter is yours. Today, this Xiao came to the longevity town not only to congratulate Chuanzang, but also to give this wishful scepter to you. The victorious devil-slaying Buddha was overjoyed. He raised both hands and respectfully received the wishful scepter. The moment the wishful scepter entered his hand, it actually sank a few centimeters. The victorious devil-slaying Buddha quickly stabilized it and said, this junior thanks Taoist for his gift. All right. Xiao Hua smiled and helped the victorious devil-slaying Buddha up. He looked around and didn't hide anything, saying encouragingly, this old man was thinking of waiting until you finished praying in bliss, then choosing a disciple to take you into the fortune gate. But since you're willing to enter Buddhism, and the Vairocana Buddha revered has taken a liking to you, this old man won't compete with him. From now on, your fate with me has come to an end. You must cultivate well, and don't repeat the same mistake. Yes, this junior understands. The victorious devil-slaying Buddha's face was filled with emotions as he nodded. Go. Xiao Hua smiled and said, escort Chuanzang to continue praying in the west. This old man has high hopes for you. Many thanks for senior support. The victorious devil-slaying Buddha respectfully walked to the side of the Buddha of Xuanji virtuous virtue. It was only at this moment that the Buddha of Xuanji virtuous virtue seemed to have awakened from a dream. He looked at Xiao Hua gratefully and opened his mouth, wanting to say something but hesitated. Some words didn't need to be said, and some love was already engraved in his heart. This old man almost forgot. Seeing the victorious devil-slaying Buddha leave, Xiao Hua suddenly slapped his forehead as if he had thought of something. He smiled and said, "Now that you're a Buddha, you're no longer as arrogant and violent as before. This old man's methods should be withdrawn." After saying that, Xiaohua didn't bother to make any hand seals. He raised his hand and a bolt of lightning flashed, landing directly on the victorious devil-slaying Buddha's head. The victorious devil-slaying Buddha was shocked and wanted to dodge, but even though he was the victorious devil-slaying Buddha, his strength was far inferior to Xiaohua's. How could he dodge? The lightning flashed and hit him. However, after the lightning flashed, the victorious devil-slaying Buddha didn't change much. The sun-moon corona that Xiaohua had expected didn't appear on his head either. Oh! Xiaohua was stunned. He grabbed at the air again, and a shadow fell on top of the victorious devil-slaying Buddha's head. Chapter 46-37. Amitabha, this is bad. How could the Dipankara archaic Buddha not know what had happened? How could he not know what the Mahavajrayana archaic Buddha had done wrong? He couldn't help but exclaim. Zhenfeng was definitely not without a backer. Moreover, this backer was terrifyingly powerful. Only, after the Dipankara archaic Buddha's exclamation, he shut his mouth. At this point, who could hide the truth of this matter in the three great continents? He couldn't, the Mahavajrayana archaic Buddha couldn't, and the Maitreya Buddha couldn't as well. Seeing that the sun-moon corona didn't appear, Xiaohua didn't suspect anything and said with a smile, "Mahavajrayana is really merciful, to actually remove your Tao crown without my consent. Could it be that he was afraid that I would snatch his disciple?" The victorious exorcism Buddha felt guilty for no reason. Although he was good at hearing and could discern the truth, he could see everything clearly. Moreover, if he stood in one place, he could know what was happening 1,000 miles away. He could also hear what mortals were saying. Thus, he was good at hearing and could discern the truth, he could see everything clearly. And yet, as he stood in front of Xiaohua, his divine ability fell upon nothing but emptiness. Even Xiaohua's figure was illusory. He couldn't tell what Xiaohua was thinking, what he was seeing, and what he was hearing. Furthermore, there was no way he could know what the Tao crown Xiaohua was talking about was, or what should have been on top of his head. Thus, he quickly smiled and said, "Yes, that day at the Thunder Sound Temple, the archaic Buddha saw the invisible Tao crown on my head and felt that it wasn't appropriate for me to be a Buddhist disciple. At that time, unfortunately, before victorious purge demon Buddha could finish speaking, Xiaohua frowned. His eyes flashed like lightning as he stared at victorious purge demon Buddha. At first, victorious purge demon Buddha didn't dare to dodge, but after a moment, his eyes began to flicker. "Damn it! You're not Yuan Tong Tian!" Xiaohua roared angrily. He raised his hand and grabbed, instantly imprisoning the victorious demon slay Buddha. He shouted, "Who are you? How dare you pretend to be Yuan Tong Tian?" Seeing this, not only was Chun Zong shocked, but even Zhen Jie, Zhen Han, and Zhen Feng were shocked. They didn't expect that the real and fake Zhen Kong would still be unable to tell the difference after they had arrived at the Thunder Sound Temple. What's more, he let this fake Zhen Kong Nirvana Extreme Bliss seek sutras for nearly 50 years. Zhen Han and Zhen Feng glanced at the silent Dipankara archaic Buddha World Lord and seemed to have thought of something. With a thoughtful look on their faces, they quickly shut their mouths as well. Whether it was the Fortune Gate or the Thunder Tune Temple, neither of them were forces they could afford to offend. "Damn it! You're the fake Zhen Kong. You actually deceived me for so long." Zhen Jie shouted. Boom! A thunderous hand streaked across the sky and slapped Zhen Jie's face. Zhen Jie, who was at the 8th grade of elemental energy, didn't even have the strength to resist. His entire body tumbled in midair. Xiaohua's cold voice sounded, "Devouring heaven, this old man asked you to take good care of Chun Zong and Zhen Kong. How did you do it? Enlightened one, spare my life." Enlightened one, spare my life. Zhen Jie had seen how Xiao Hua killed the heaven-swallowing beast. Now that he saw Xiao Hua get angry, the surrounding space was filled with coldness, and layers of lightning were like guillotines surging in the sky above Jiangtiao Temple. He had long been scared out of his wits, and shouted in midair, "This matter has nothing to do with me. I wasn't there at that time." In order to save his life, Zhen Jie briefly recounted the matter of him chasing after Ni Quan. He shouted, "As for the specifics, I'm also not clear." Xiao Hua gritted his teeth and took a deep breath, temporarily suppressing the anger in his chest. He looked at the victorious demon vanquishing Buddha whose eyes were filled with terror and ignored him. He looked at Chunzhen and said, "Chunzong, tell me, what is going on?" Chunzhen hesitated for a moment. After recovering from his shock, he turned around to take a look. The entire process was as clear as a mirror. This Zhen Kong was definitely not Yuan Tong Tian, and the real Yuan Tong Tian had already disappeared from the shores of the Eastern Sea. However, he was very conflicted in his heart. Previously, Zhen Kong did his best to protect him, but he was also arrogant and unruly. He often killed Dao Gate cultivators and demonic beast race cultivators, which really made Chunzhen worried to death. There were also many clashes between them. After arriving at the hidden immortal continent, although this fake Zhen Kong was not as devoted to protecting him as the real Zhen Kong, he was still very respectful and courteous toward him. This was especially true as this fake Zhen Kong was also proficient in Buddhist techniques and would often debate with him. Chunzong naturally had his suspicions when he saw Zhen Kong's improvement and change. However, Chunzong was clear that it was impossible for the Thunder Temple's Mahavarakana revered Buddha to not be able to differentiate between the real and fake Zhen Kong. This Zhen Kong must be the real Zhen Kong. The reason why he changed was just like what Zhen Kong said after returning from the Thunder Temple. After seeing the expression of the real and fake Zhen Kong, he was enlightened by the Mahavarakana revered Buddha. He knew that his previous inadequacies were being changed by his efforts. What Chunzong saw was different from the previous Zhen Kong. It was his change. Now that Chunzong thought about it again, his heart was filled with bitterness. He mocked himself for being childish and avoiding it. Although people could change, their nature couldn't be changed. It was the same for the demonic beast race. Yuan Tong Tian was arrogant and killed people without hesitation. Although he wanted to change, how could he change in the blink of an eye? It wasn't that he didn't suspect if this Zhen Kong was Yuan Tong Tian. Instead, he was avoiding it because he liked the fake Zhen Kong and didn't like the real Zhen Kong. He had let down Yuan Tong Tian, who sincerely protected him. If I treat Yuan Tong Tian like this, then what about the Mahavarakana revered Buddha? Chunzong thought more than Xiao Hua. Seeing Chunzang's hesitation, the Dipankara archaic Buddha spoke, "Amitabha. Benefactor Xiao. Shut up." Xiao Hua roared and stopped the Dipankara archaic Buddha from speaking. He yelled, "Old Dipankara, it's not that I don't want to give your Thunder Temple a chance. It's just that it's not the time for you to speak. If you dare to say anything else, I'll kill you and Manjushri first before leading the Fortune Gate's disciples to attack the Thunder Temple. I'm not interested in the Guanyin Bodhisattva's Buddha fruit, but I'm interested in the Buddha Lord's Buddha seat." Hearing this, the Gaochen Immortal Emperor's eyes lit up. The Grand Mist Ancestor, who had been quietly observing, also revealed a smile. How could the Dipankara archaic Buddha fall for it? He smiled and ignored Xiao Hua's words. He didn't want to argue with Xiao Hua anymore. Unfortunately, the Dipankara archaic Buddha was too weak. He had already underestimated Xiao Hua's strength. If Xiao Hua had truly given up and killed him in the Longevity Town regardless of the price he had to pay, it wouldn't be a joke. Sigh. Seeing Xiao Hua so angry, Chuanzeng also became alert in his heart. He sighed and explained the cause of the matter in full detail. Tai Bai jinxing. Xiao Hua turned his head without hesitation and looked at Taibai Jinxing. Speak. Yes, Lightning Master Xiao. Taibai Jinxing didn't feel any pressure facing the Lightning Master of the Immortal Palace. Although he had already seen through it, he didn't point it out. Instead, he kicked this troublesome matter to the Thunder Temple. As such, he casually told everything he knew. You. Xiao Hua squinted his eyes and looked at the Nanwu Wisdom Manjushri Bodhisattva, who had gone through life and death with him. His gaze was filled with hostility. Nanwu Wisdom Manjushri Bodhisattva didn't feel any pressure. That day, he had already seen through who was the real fire ape and who was the real six-eared macaque. However, he didn't make any decision. Still, he glanced at the Dipankara archaic Buddha. Amitabha. Now that things have come to this, tell me the truth. The Dipankara archaic Buddha pressed his palms together. Yes, World Lord. Nanwu Wisdom Manjushri Bodhisattva told him everything he saw by the East Sea shore, how he had already seen through the reason but couldn't differentiate between the real and the fake. He then brought the two Zhenkongs to the Thunder Temple, and how Yuan Tong Tian was killed by the fake Zhenkong. Hearing that Yuan Tong Tian had been killed, Xiao Hua's eyes turned red. Yuan Tong Tian was loyal to him and followed his orders to protect Jiang Luer. Who would have thought that he would be killed by the fake Zhenkong in the Thunder Temple? Such an ending made Xiao Hua furious. Ha ha ha. Xiao Hua looked at the fake Zhenkong that he had imprisoned and laughed. Poor Yuan Tong Tian. He was killed by you in front of Mahavarakana. Mahavarakana is really blind. I really want to know what kind of background you have to have Mahavarakana protect you. After saying that, Xiao Hua slapped his forehead and used another ability of the delusion-breaking Dharma Eye, Heavenly Eye. However, when Xiao Hua saw it clearly, his eyes widened and he yelled, "Damn it, damn it, damn it. It's actually the six-eared macaque. I should have strangled you to death that day. I shouldn't have listened to Master Machin and let you live. Now, I've angered Yuan Tong Tian and lost my life because of it." After saying that, Xiao Hua raised his hand, and a bolt of lightning flashed on his finger. It pierced through the void and was about to pierce the six-eared macaque's heart. Amitabha. Xiao Tanue, please show mercy. Please listen to this old monk's explanation. It won't be too late to attack after that. The Dipankara archaic Buddha didn't dare to be careless. He raised his hand, and Buddha lights appeared out of nowhere. A 9th-rank Buddha lotus blocked the lightning. Buddha lights overflowed from the Buddha lotus, and countless Buddha kingdoms appeared from within. Damn you, bald donkey. Xiao Hua sneered and said angrily, you dare to show off in front of this old man with such means? Do you think I can't kill you? Xiao Hua didn't take any action and allowed the Buddhist lotus to block the Buddhist light. Boom. The seemingly dim lightning struck the Buddhist lotus and a huge rumbling sound was produced. The Buddhist kingdom was instantly annihilated and the Buddhist lotus also withered to an extreme degree. Amidst the explosion, the lightning flew towards the six-eared macaque's heart like Xiao Hua's killing intent. The Dipankara archaic Buddha's expression changed greatly. He realized that Xiao Hua's threat wasn't just empty words. However, if he wanted to attack now, it was too late. Chapter 46-38. Seeing that the six-eared macaque was about to be killed, Chun Zong suddenly knelt on the ground and said, Uncle, please restrain your thunderous rage and listen to what the Dipankara archaic Buddha has to say. Boy, I only just learned that Zhenkong had died. I've let Zhenkong down. If I've done something wrong, I'll have to bear the responsibility. The word uncle was like a sudden clap of thunder, striking everyone in the field. Even the Dipankara archaic Buddha was dumbfounded once again. This was the biggest secret of the Sutra praying of Nirvana. It was even bigger than the secret of Zhenkong being sent by Xiao Hua. This was a secret that even the Mahavarakana archaic Buddha didn't know about. What's the background of this Xiaohua? The primordial mist ancestor squinted his eyes and thought to himself, not only is he the dragon master of the Dragon Island, the thunder master of the immortal palace, the Buddhist sect's Namo great merciful Mahavarakana Bodhisattva, even the Xuanji Mahavarakana Buddha is his nephew. Who in the three continents can rival him? If Xiaohua isn't eliminated, how can my sky-bearing palace rise? Golden radiances flickered in the golden-winged great rock's eyes. While he was shocked, he was glad that he had the intention to befriend Xiaohua. As for the Gochen immortal emperor, his face was blocked by the golden radiances. Although he was feeling complicated, no one knew what he was thinking. Seeing Chun Zong kneeling and calling him uncle, Xiaohua pondered for a moment and kept the lightning radiances. He said calmly, you're the Xuanji Mahavarakana Buddha and my nephew. I can't ignore your words. However, Yuan Tong Tian was ordered by me to protect you. He was loyal to you. Now that he died in such a pitiful manner, I will investigate his death to the end. If you're in the wrong, don't blame me for being ruthless. Yes, boy understands. Although I don't know what exactly happened, I feel that the secret behind this seems to be beyond your imagination, and even beyond the imagination of the venerables of the world. Chuanzong hurriedly expressed his thoughts. Speak. Xiaohua looked at the Namo Dipankara archaic Buddha world lord. Sigh. The Dipankara archaic Buddha let out a sigh. After sending a voice transmission, Immortal Emperor Gochen smiled, Dipankara archaic Buddha, since you have something to say, why don't you make it public? If you were to deceive my immortal palace's master Lei, I'm afraid that even if he was involved, he wouldn't know. Motherfucker, shut up. Xiaohua felt vexed for no reason and scolded, Gauchen old man, and you, this old man still hasn't settled the score with you. If you don't tell me where the Heaven's Punishment Prison crystal is, I won't let you leave Longevity Town. Boom. Immortal Emperor Gochen's body shone with golden light. It seemed like he was about to get angry. The golden-winged great Peng beside him laughed and said, not bad, not bad. I've heard that Xiao Longsher is infatuated with the new princess. For the sake of his love, he killed 900,000 disciples of the four great clans. Today, this holy sage will lend Xiao Longsher a helping hand. Damn it! Immortal Emperor Gochen cursed. The radiance only circled around him and didn't attack. If the great sage hall joined forces with the Fortune Gate, the immortal palace might not be their match. Speak. In order to seek justice for Yuan Tong Tian, Xiaohua didn't hesitate to glare at the three exalted experts of the three continents and said to the Dipankara archaic Buddha world lord. Amitba, it's like this. Naturally, the Dipankara archaic Buddha world lord wouldn't let Immortal Emperor Gochen, the primordial mist ancestor, and the others know about the Thunder Sound Temple's secret. Hearing this, Xiaohua's heart was filled with complex emotions. He didn't know what to say. The six-eared macaque was Ananda's reincarnation. However, just like the Prime Clarity Palace Lord and Grand Clarity Palace Lord's clones, Ananda didn't return to the three continents. Instead, he returned to the Dawn Rain continent. Ananda shouldn't have returned to the Blessed Land world. However, he met Xiaohua, and Xiaohua brought him and the fire ape Yuan Tong Tian to the three continents. Ananda's reincarnation, the six-eared macaque, didn't have such powerful abilities. It was impossible for him to have such powerful illusions. However, after experiencing the separation of yin and yang in his own space, his abilities were greatly enhanced. His future potential was limitless. The Mahavarakana archaic Buddha world lord made the right choice when facing the real Zhenkong Yuan Tong Tian and the fake Zhenkong six-eared macaque. After all, the Mahavarakana archaic Buddha world lord made the right choice when facing Zhenkong Yuan Tong Tian and the fake Zhenkong six-eared macaque. This was because the Mahavarakana archaic Buddha world lord had mistaken Jinkong six-eared macaque for Ananda. In other words, in the eyes of the Mahavarakana archaic Buddha world lord, Jiang Luer and Yuan Tong Tian were both fake. Only this six-eared macaque was the real one. The fruit of defeating the demon Buddha wasn't given to Yuan Tong Tian. It was given to the six-eared macaque and Ananda. However, because of his appearance, he had snatched Nanwa Maitreya Buddha world lord's Buddha position. Jiang Luer had snatched Ananda's Prajnaparamita Heart Sutra. The six-eared macaque didn't dare to snatch it from Jiang Luer. He could only snatch Yuan Tongtian's. All of this happened when he appeared at the East Sea. When he appeared to scheme, he was discovered by the Mahavarakana archaic Buddha world lord. The Thunder Temple wasn't wrong. The Mahavarakana archaic Buddha world lord wasn't wrong either. At that time, it was the best time to point the six-eared macaque as Jinkong. This opportunity was also fought for by the six-eared macaque with all his might. The one who was wrong could only be the six-eared macaque and Ananda. He didn't expect the fire ape Yuan Tong Tian, who had always ignored everyone, to be so loyal to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua also valued Yuan Tong Tian so much. Because with his ability, he couldn't see what was happening in the Shenhua continent. Therefore, he made the wrong choice, which was to kill the fire ape. Because the six-eared macaque couldn't see through Xiao Hua's actions, he didn't know that the fire ape had a sun-moon crown on his head. As the Buddha of Xuanji Maitreya, Chunzong naturally couldn't hear the Dipankara archaic Buddha world lord's voice transmission. He only saw the Dipankara archaic Buddha world lord clasping his hands together and lowering his head in silence. Xiao Hua looked at the sky with a complicated expression. Only then did he speak. "Uncle, boy didn't notice and let the six-eared macaque kill Yuan Tong Tian. This boy has let Yuan Tong Tian down. Please punish me. Stand up, Luer." Xiao Hua helped Chunzong up and shook his head. "You're just a mortal. You don't know about this. Even Taibai Jinxing and Manjushri Bodhisattva don't know about this. How can you be responsible for this? Don't worry and go to the West to seek scriptures. With the protection of the chastity precepts and my reputation, if anyone dares to do anything to you, my fortune gate will kill them all." "No, uncle. You don't understand." Although Chunzong stood up, he still had tears on his face as he said, "Boy did suspect it before, but then, Chunzong told Xiao Hua about his regrets." Xiao Hua frowned. Jinkong was loyal to Chunzong, but he didn't have the heart to follow Buddhism. Compared to Ananda's reincarnation of the six-eared macaque, he was much weaker. Xiao Hua pondered for a while and nodded. "If that's the case, I won't pursue the Thunder Sound Temple's responsibility. However, since the six-eared macaque killed Yuan Tong Tian, I won't let it go. Even if the Mahavarakana world lord comes, I'll still take his life." Ha ha ha. Speaking until here, Xiao Hua suddenly laughed. He looked at the Dipankara archaic Buddha world lord with a meaningful gaze and said, "Do you know why the Mahavarakana world lord didn't come to the longevity town?" Amitba. The Dipankara archaic Buddha world lord shook his head and said, "Xiao Tan, you're overthinking. The world lord isn't such a scheming person. He had already paid the price when Yuan Tong Tian was killed. I don't care what the price is." Xiao Hua only wanted to take revenge for Yuan Tong Tian. He waved his hand and said, "I only want to kill the six-eared macaque to take revenge for Yuan Tong Tian." Amitba. The Dipankara archaic Buddha world lord felt helpless. He knew that Xiao Hua's means had already surpassed his abilities. Even if he couldn't stop Xiao Hua, he still wouldn't be his opponent. He looked at the six-eared macaque and smiled bitterly. "Ananda, if you knew this would happen, why did you follow him? Have you realized it?" "Humph." Xiao Hua snorted. The lightning in the sky dispersed, and the six-eared macaque's body was released. The six-eared macaque landed on the ground. The panic on his face had already disappeared. He looked at the Dipankara archaic Buddha world lord, then looked at the Thunder Sound Temple. However, there wasn't any regret on his face. He knelt on the ground and kowtowed 9 times in the direction of the Thunder Sound Temple. He said, "Master, I've always thought that I'm smart, and that I'm the wisest person in Buddhism. However, when I was about to die, I realized that I knew nothing. You've done so much for me, and I felt that everything was natural. When I'm reborn, I'll be your disciple again. When that time comes, I hope that you won't restrict me too much. Let me have my freedom." After that, the 6-eared macaque kowtowed to Chun Zong again and said, "Master, although you've taken away my opportunity, I've gained a lot from following you. Although it hasn't been a long time, I've finally realized that my heart towards Buddhism is like the light of a firefly compared to Master. Master, you're my role model. Everything that I've done, I can only blame myself. The Tao of Karma is nothing more than that. Today, I'll take my leave. I wish you success in your quest for the Western scriptures, and complete your dream." Sigh. Chun Zong wanted to say something, but all the words he wanted to say turned into a sigh. The 6-eared macaque stood up and looked at Xiaofan. He wasn't afraid at all. He said calmly, "Enlightened one, if you want to kill me, no one in this world would dare to stop you. Don't worry, I won't resist. However, you don't have the right to kill me. On the hidden immortal continent, there's only one person who has the right to decide my life or death. I only want you to follow me to a place. If that person says that I deserve to die, I won't say anything else. You don't have to do anything. I'll kill myself to appease the world." Chapter 46-39. Looking at the reincarnated 6-eared macaque, Xiaofan sneered. The Dipankara archaic Buddha had already stated that Ananda had chosen to enter the beast Tao and reincarnate into the demon race to avoid the Mahavairakana exalted Buddha. His intention to betray the Tao was clear. Then, Xiaofan said, "Oh? Hidden immortal continent? I thought it was the Thunder Sound Temple's Mahavairakana exalted Buddha. So it's the hidden immortal continent. I'm curious. Even I don't have the right to kill you, yet that person has the right to do so. Who is that person? Rest assured, enlightened master. That person has no cultivation and is just a mortal. Enlightened master will know when you see him." The 6-eared macaque said calmly. He knew the situation he was in and didn't dare to say anything to provoke Xiaofan. He only looked at Xiaofan and stated, "What if I don't go?" Xiaofan asked. "Enlightened master, you can choose not to go. No one in this world would dare to force you to go." The 6-eared macaque replied, "However, since enlightened master is talking about karma, let me settle it." Looking at the 6-eared macaque's calmness and calmness in his eyes, Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. "All right." Xiaofan nodded and looked at the thunderbolt immortal, Wen Chu, and the heavenly being. He threw the Kunlun mirror to the heavenly being and instructed, "Fellow Taoists, please guard this place. No one is allowed to leave. I'll be back soon." "Yes." The thunderbolt immortal's voice was like thunder. He looked at the Gochen immortal emperor. The heavenly being took the Kunlun mirror and looked at everyone with bright eyes. "Dragon Master Xiao, please go. This sage will also stay here and won't leave." The golden-winged great roc looked at Feng Wu and quickly expressed his stance. "Humph." The Gochen immortal emperor sneered. He flipped his right hand and took out the clear heavenly mirror. He said, "The hidden immortal continent is my territory. Who can stop me from going anywhere I want?" Old Man Gauchen. The Grand Mist Ancestor immediately shouted. "Don't be arrogant. You dare to disobey Taoist Xiao?" Initially, the Namo Dipankara archaic Buddha was about to leave with the myriad Buddhas. Upon hearing Xiaohua's words, he couldn't help but frown. However, after hearing the Go-Chen Immortal Emperor and the Primordial Mist Ancestor's words, his frown loosened. He said, "Your Majesty, the Sutra Praying to Extreme Bliss is a grand event held by my Immortal Palace and the Thunder Monastery. Although it's completed today, this old monk still has some insights to share with your Majesty. If your Majesty doesn't mind, can you please descend from the clouds and discuss with this old monk?" "Forget it." The Go-Chen Immortal Emperor pondered for a moment and nodded. "Dipankara Archaic Buddha, I'll stay behind to listen to you. This time, both our sects have exhausted so much effort, only to end up benefiting others. How sad. Your Majesty's words are too serious." The Dipankara Archaic Buddha smiled and said, "It doesn't matter if it's a wedding dress or not. As long as the Buddha's light falls upon the concealed immortal, and the Confucian's words become blissful, our goal has been achieved." Seeing that everything was settled, Xiaohua waved his hand and took the six-eared macaque away. Then, he asked, "Where are we going?" "There." The six-eared macaque pointed at the shore of the East Sea. Without saying anything, Xiaohua's figure flickered, and he transformed into a bolt of lightning, shooting into the distance. Seeing that Xiaohua had left, the primordial chaos ancestor, Taoist rider Crane, and child of the dark night looked at each other. Then, they flew toward the Thunderbolt Hermit and cupped their hands, saying, "I'm the primordial chaos ancestor." "Greetings, Taoist Thunderbolt." The Go-Chen Immortal Emperor and the Dipankara Archaic Buddha descended and stopped above the River Tide Temple. The Manjushri Bodhisattva turned around and looked at the Buddhas and heavenly kings before sitting down cross-legged. The golden-winged Great Rock and Phoenix Wu smiled and landed in front of Wen Chu. Then, he cupped his hands and said, "Long time no see." Immortal Wen Chu. Jinjia, on the other hand, had a troubled look on his face. In front of Chuanzang, he complained, "Master, have you ever considered letting Zhenfeng participate in this Western Paradise scripture retrieval? I'm used to riding him, and I really don't want to let him go. Moreover, we're heading to the West Sea. If you keep Zhenfeng, wouldn't it be more convenient to ride the 8 Divisions Heavenly Dragon's body in the West Sea?" Before Chuanzang could say anything, Zhenfeng's figure flickered, and he flew to the side of the golden-winged Great Rock. He had already made up his mind. He was the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace's 10th prince. Today, he had already become an 8 Divisions Heavenly Dragon. Next time, he would never be fooled by the Western Paradise scripture retrieval, even if he was given a Buddhist seat. After all, Jinjia was too heavy, and the way he put it was too smelly. Everyone was waiting for Xiaohua's return in the Longevity Town. However, no one expected that in just a few moments, a thunderous rumble could be heard. Rumble. In the southwest, in the direction of the East Sea's shore, a thunderous rumble could be heard. Thousands of flames appeared in the sky within 1,000 miles, burning away the darkness before dawn. "Oh, what's going on?" Seeing that it was the direction Xiaohua and the six-eared macaque were heading, everyone was shocked. How could they not know what had happened? Perfected cultivator Qingyuan, quickly go and take a look. Immortal Emperor Gaochen flew up first and shouted, "What's going on?" "Humph, pretentious." Celestial being was not used to Immortal Emperor Gaochen's behavior. He snorted and said, "It's only 1,000 miles. You'll know if you use the clear eyes technique." However, before Celestial being could finish, he shouted, "What? What formation is blocking the southwest of the Longevity Town?" These words were transmitted by Xiaohua's mind. Wen Chu's expression also changed, and he hurriedly covered it up. "That's right, fellow Immortal Xiao sent a message. He's blocked by a mysterious formation in the southwest of the Longevity Town. He can't leave from there. Celestial being, use the Kunlun mirror to subdue Chuanzang and then go to assist Xiao Xian. Thunderbolt Immortal, you stay here and don't fall for the trick of luring the tiger away from the mountain. Rock Sage and Phoenix Sage, please go to the north of Longevity Town to investigate." After saying that, Wen Chu said to immortal Emperor Gaochen, "Your Majesty, stay here as well. I'll go with Sun Jian to the east." "All right, thank you, Wen Chu Palace Master." When immortal Emperor Gaochen saw Wen Chu's arrangement, he knew that Xiao Hua was guarding against him. He didn't say anything and just followed Wen Chu's instructions. Then, Wen Chu smiled at the Dipankara archaic Buddha and said, "If it's possible, World Lord, you can stay here as well. How about inviting the Namo Wisdom Manjushri Bodhisattva to the west of the Longevity Town to investigate?" "Amitba. That's how it should be." The Dipankara archaic Buddha didn't say anything else. He ordered the Manjushri Bodhisattva to bring some arhats and other Buddhas over. "As for the three of you, you can stay here as well." Wen Chu looked at the primordial chaos ancestor and the others and said with a fake smile, "Thank you, fellow Taoists." The primordial chaos ancestor knew how important this matter was. He didn't dare to say anything that might cause a misunderstanding. He cupped his hands and descended, sitting cross-legged with Taoist rider Crane and the Dark Night Child on the Jiangchao Ridge. After the assignment was done, Wen Chu brought Sun Jian and the other immortal generals and flew towards the east. Xiao Hua took the six-eared macaque with him and flew southwest. He did not know who the six-eared macaque was talking about, but he knew that since the karmic hands were moving, he should go with the six-eared macaque and find out who this mysterious person was. Therefore, Xiao Hua didn't say anything to the six-eared macaque. He only focused on flying. 1,000 miles passed in a blink of an eye. The surrounding sky started to darken, and the starry sky started to hide. Xiao Hua knew that this was the darkness before dawn. It was also at this moment that Xiao Hua suddenly felt some indescribable fluctuations in space. These fluctuations were like cotton wool that wrapped around Xiao Hua's body in an instant. After several breaths of time, Xiao Hua felt as if the space around him was filled with invisible obstacles. His flying speed suddenly decreased, as if he had fallen into a quagmire. "Oh? What's going on?" Xiao Hua was taken aback, but he didn't stop moving. He released his divine sense, and with a flicker, he teleported into the distance. Unfortunately, in the blink of an eye, Xiao Hua's figure appeared again. He couldn't stay in the void for long, so he couldn't use his teleportation technique. Moreover, the strange thing was that when he released his divine sense, there were no obstacles within 10,000 miles. However, when he released his divine sense, it was almost the same. It was as if, when his divine sense fell into the Sumra restriction, it seemed that his divine sense swept far away, but in reality, it was very close. The primordial chaos ancestor's ambush. This thought flashed through Xiao Hua's mind, but after a moment, he laughed involuntarily. Even if the primordial chaos ancestor had obtained an opportunity in the Star Moon Palace, and his cultivation had reached the late Great Ascension stage, if he wanted to face the experts of the three continents, he still couldn't do it. He couldn't do such an unwise thing. Break. Xiao Hua was too lazy to think about it. He grabbed the six-eared macaque, imprisoned it, and threw it into the Shenhua continent. Then, he waved his hands, and a thunderous hand appeared, grabbing at the invisible restriction. Boom! The sound of thunder was loud, and the void within a few miles was torn apart. The feeling of being entangled by the fluctuations was still there. Damn it! Xiao Hua was truly enraged. He rubbed his hands again, and thousands of thick crystal lights fell into the void. Boom boom boom. Ka-cha-cha. In the sky several li away, thunderstorms surged and surged like a tide, covering the sky and covering the earth as they fell. However, the thunderbolts were like pearls cast into darkness, and it didn't cause any ripples. Everything around him was like an illusion. Open. Xiao Hua hurriedly retreated. When the fluctuations that entangled him disappeared, Xiao Hua slapped his forehead and opened his delirium breaker Dharma eye. When he saw everything in front of him, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. In the delirium breaker Dharma eye, layers of fist-sized flames filled the entire space like clouds. These flames were light red, and the delirium breaker Dharma eye could see them clearly. Xiaohua understood that what the delirium breaker Dharma eye saw was condensed from the essence of vitality. These layers of flames must be an extremely powerful restriction formation. Who is it? Xiaohua was shocked. Who dares to set up such a formation when the supremes of the various sects are gathered at the Longevity Town? Chapter 4640. Fellow Taoists. Xiaohua immediately sent a sound transmission in his heart. The southwest direction of Longevity Town is blocked by a forbidden array, I can't go out. Quickly, fellow Taoist Celestial, come and help fellow Taoists, you all go and take a look. After sending the sound transmission, Xiaohua opened his illusion breaker eye again and activated his flying technique to fly into the flaming clouds. Sure enough, when Xiaohua's figure fell into the flaming clouds, those clouds were like cotton wool, they could be scattered but they would not shatter. Xiaohua's flying figure was entangled by the scattered clouds, and when more clouds were entangled around Xiaohua's body, Xiaohua once again felt that it was difficult to move. Humph! Xiaohua sneered and closed his illusion breaker eye. What he saw with his naked eye was still a pitch-black night sky. Not long after, the Celestial flew over with the Kunlun mirror and shouted, "Fellow Taoist, don't worry, I'll help you." With that, the Celestial was about to take out the white bones. Don't be anxious. Xiaohua raised his hand to stop the Celestial and said, Eye's lightning hand can't even tear apart this inexplicable forbidden array. I'm afraid that your Celestial's white bones won't be enough. Hee, that's true. The Celestial being smiled foolishly and nodded. That's all I have. You know all about it. Just tell me what you want me to do. How's your refining of the 10,000 extinguishing heavenly dipper? Xiaohua narrowed his eyes, raised his hand to signal the Celestial to give him the Kunlun mirror, and then asked. The Celestial gave the Kunlun mirror to Xiaohua and said, the 10,000 extinguishing heavenly dipper is the Celestial race's heaven artifact. Although I have the method to repair and refine it, it has only been a few decades and can't be fully completed. However, even if the 10,000 extinguishing heavenly dipper is completely repaired, I'm afraid it's useless to break this restriction. Xiaohua took the Kunlun mirror and first stored Chun Zong into the Shenhua continent. This time, he was relieved and nodded, fellow Taoist is right. The 10,000 extinguishing heavenly dipper is used for fighting. If it's used for breaking restrictions, it's useless. Seeing that Xiaohua was neither anxious nor slow, the Celestial understood and said with a smile, so fellow Taoist already has a method to break the restriction. You called me over just because you're worried. Indeed. Xiaohua nodded and said, I have 2 ways to break the seal, but I don't know which one is useful. Fellow Taoist, hurry up and break the seal. The Celestial said with a smile. I'm rather curious. Who would dare to besiege Longevity Town at this time? There are supreme beings from the Immortal Palace, Thunder Temple, Great Holy Hall, and Fortune Gate here. Who else could it be? Xiaohua sneered. At this moment, even if he used his heel to think, he knew who was behind this. Who on this hidden immortal continent has such strength? No way. Xiaohua thought in his heart, and did not hide it from Heaven Man. Heaven Man immediately exclaimed, it's actually the 4 great families? Aren't they? Aren't they setting up a formation at Dawn and Dusk Cliff to fight against my Fortune Gate? How could they have set up such a large restrictive formation in the Longevity Town? Right now, we can't be sure if it's one of the 4 great families. At this time, Xiaohua didn't seem to be particularly anxious to break the array. Instead, he asked with a smile, however, I have 70% confidence. Fellow Celestial, do you still remember the 2 doubts I had in the Fortune Dao Palace? Heaven Man slapped his own forehead and laughed, I understand now. Fellow Taoist, you suspected that the four great families didn't use their full strength that day. So, they were just deliberately mystifying things at dawn and dusk cliff to attract our attention and also the Immortal Palace's attention. They made that old man Gauchen think that the four great families were here to steal Wen Chu's 5 Qi unification art, but in reality, their target was the Longevity Town. Their goal was Immortal Emperor Gauchen. Yes. Xiaohua nodded. If I'm not mistaken, the four great families have been setting up this Longevity Town for many years. It might even have started after the Sutra Seeking Extreme Bliss began. They knew that when the Sutra Seeking Extreme Bliss ended, Immortal Emperor Gauchen would definitely leave the Immortal Palace and come to the Longevity Town. They set up a formation here to take Immortal Emperor Gauchen's life or take his position. In order to not arouse Immortal Emperor Gauchen's suspicion, they had placed an army of 900,000 at Chaomuya. Now, Immortal Emperor Gauchen had fallen for their trap and easily left the palace to come to hidden Immortal Continent. We are just fish in the moat caught in a fire at the city gates. Damn it, the four great families are too cunning. Heaven Man was speechless. At this time, Wen Chu's voice sounded in their minds. That is indeed the case. There's also a strange wave coming from the east of Longevity Town, filling up the space. I can see it with my divine sense and clear eyes technique, but I can't pass through. As for what the wave looks like, I can't see it clearly. Wen Chu then smiled and said, Fellow Immortal Xiao, do you still want to break the restriction now? What's wrong with me? Break what restriction now? Xiaohua smiled. This is the time to threaten Gauchen, old man. If we don't seize this opportunity, how will we know where the Heaven's Punishment Prison Crystal is? As for that six-eared macaque, it doesn't matter when we kill him. Plus, I didn't promise him to find that mysterious person. If I am not happy, I will just kill him. Xiaohua's body flashed, and he brought the Heaven Man to where Wen Chu was. At this time, the eastern sky was filled with immortal generals. These immortal generals used their own divine abilities, wanting to rush out. Unfortunately, they could only fly out a few miles before they were blocked by the space. It was difficult for them to take another step. Seeing Xiaohua come over, Sun Jian hurried forward to greet him. Xiaohua nodded and opened his delusion breaker Dharma eye. He saw that in the horizon, there were golden lotuses shining with dazzling golden light. They were like layers of clouds that covered the entire heaven and earth. All of the immortal generals were trapped in these golden lotus clouds. He he. Xiaohua laughed coldly and turned to fly to the north. Sun Jian hurriedly called out, Master Xiao Lei, did you find anything? Oh? Xiaohua asked curiously. Don't you have the void breaker eyes? Can't you see it? Junior's void breaker eyes are most useful for breaking the seal of the void. Junior tried to open it just now, but the void is blocked. Junior's void breaker eyes can't open it. Sun Jian answered honestly. When Xiaohua heard that, he thought of something. His expression changed slightly, and he immediately took out the Kunlun mirror. As expected, the Kunlun mirror's light beam fell into the void, and the void was empty. There was no spatial passage that he expected to be born. Damn it! Xiaohua cursed and hurriedly urged his soul consciousness. He wanted to see the Black Wind Ridge's teleportation formation, which was not too far from here. Unfortunately, he still couldn't discover the Black Wind Ridge even though he had released his soul awareness more than 10,000 miles away. He couldn't discover the teleportation formation either. Xiaohua knew that Taoist witches going south, going north was probably going to lose its effect in this forbidden formation. Then, he thought for a moment and asked, General Sun, who do you think this mysterious formation is? Sun Jian answered without hesitation. If it's not the four great families, then it's the 100 schools of thought. Even if it's the 100 schools of thought, it's still instigated by the four great families. This old man thinks so too. Xiaohua nodded. You should hurry and report to old man Gaochen. Tell him to wash his neck clean and wait. Sun Jian's expression changed, but he still respectfully said, Junior understands. Junior will go report to him right now. Seeing Sun Jian and Taibai Jinxing leave in a hurry, Xiaohua didn't delay and went to the north of Longevity Town. In the northern sky, Saint Peng and Saint Phoenix, the two great saints of the demon race, saw Xiaohua appear. Saint Peng came to greet him. Xiaohua helped Sage Peng up and asked, Sage Peng, did you find anything strange? Of course. The Golden Rock sneered. This is the work of those old bald donkeys from the Thunder Temple. No wonder Mahavarakana didn't come, he set up this formation outside. Thunder Temple? Mahavarakana? Xiaohua was a little confused and asked, why does Sage Peng say that? This void is filled with the light of relics. No matter how I use my flying technique, I can't break through this light. The Golden Rock pointed to the distant sky and said. Phoenix Wu looked at Xiaohua and said, Sage Peng and this sage have already tried, but we didn't succeed. I think. Fellow Daoist's lightning escape technique also can't succeed. Xiaohua turned pale with fright. He asked, is Phoenix Sage sure? After all, Xiaohua's lightning escape technique had once been close to breaking through the limit of time law in Star Moon Palace. How could it not break through this restriction? Previously, he and the Celestial had patted their chests with confidence. One was the Kunlun mirror, and the other was naturally this lightning escape technique. Basically, I'm sure. Phoenix Wu nodded. If fellow Daoist doesn't believe me, you can try. Xiaohua naturally wouldn't try now. He only opened his delusion breaker eyes. Sure enough, as the Golden Rock said, his eyes were filled with the light of relics. There were no other colors. Hiss. Xiaohua pinched his chin and thought to himself, could this really be the work of the Thunder Sound Temple? Why do they want to use this restriction formation? Other than the Immortal Palace and the Great Sage Hall, there's only my Fortune Gate and the so-called Sky-Bearing Palace. Could it be? They want to destroy my Taoism? Thinking of this, Xiaohua's face turned cold. He instantly teleported to the western sky. At this time, the east wind broke through the dawn. The warm sunlight pierced through the darkness, and the western sky was still a little white. When Xiaohua saw Nanwu Wisdom Manjushri leading a group of guardian heavenly kings, arhats, and vajras to break through the restriction formation, Xiaohua's suspicion disappeared. If the Buddhism sect had laid down a restriction formation, the Dipankara archaic Buddha and Nanwu Wisdom Manjushri would definitely be the first to leave the formation. Why would they stay here as hostages for no reason? Of course, this didn't eliminate the possibility that the Buddhism sect was trying to hide something. Greetings, senior apprentice brother. Nanwu Wisdom Manjushri hurriedly greeted Xiaohua. You're too polite, Bodhisattva. Xiaohua hurriedly helped Manjushri up and said, it's better to call me Sandalwood, donate it, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 46-41. However, Nanwu Wisdom Manjushri shook his head and said, since senior brother has attained the fruit of Nanwu Merciful Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva, you are a Bodhisattva of Leying Temple. Perhaps you don't want to rebuild your Buddha body in Leying Temple, but you are still my senior brother. Sigh. Fine. Xiaohua waved his hand and said helplessly, do whatever you want. I won't go to Leying Temple. Anything will do. Go to Leying Temple? Manjushri Bodhisattva was stunned for a moment, then he smiled and said, senior brother, you misunderstood me. That is to listen respectfully in front of Mahavarakana World Venerable. It is a blessing that hundreds of millions of bodhisattvas can't get. Xiaohua did not know whether to laugh or cry. He finally understood why he suddenly attained the fruit of Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva. When he collected the water from Liao River in Longevity Town, he almost attained the fruit. The virtues he obtained were not only the power of faith from the people in Longevity Town, but also the virtues of spreading good seeds across Xiaoyu continent. Later on, Buddha Subhuti appeared out of nowhere. Buddha Subhuti was Xiaohua's Buddhist avatar. Therefore, all the merits fell on Buddha Subhuti. When Xiaohua entered the ruins by mistake and obtained Nanwa Maitreya's relics and virtues, he even sacrificed himself for the people in the ruins. His virtues had long surpassed the fruit of Bodhisattva. When Xiaohua and Buddha Bodhi were teleported back to Great Snow Mountain, Jing Lu cut off her long-cherished wish and attained the fruit of Buddha Bodhi. At this time, Buddha Bodhi was still Xiaohua, but Nanwa Maitreya Buddha was different from Xiaohua. When Wen Chu became a human being, Demon Lord became a demon, and Reverend Yun became a dragon, Nanwa Maitreya Buddha had also changed. Xiaohua did not know whether he had become a human being or not, but he knew that Nanwa Maitreya Buddha had returned the virtues that belonged to Xiaohua's original body. Therefore, when he was in Longevity Town, Xiaohua accidentally and inevitably attained the fruit of Nanwa Merciful Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva in front of Liao River, which had not attained the fruit of Buddha over 400 years ago. Of course, the fruit of Buddha was a touch of light on the golden body of Bodhisattva, but on Xiaohua's body, it was just some light on the Godhead. Light. Let's talk about this later. Xiaohua looked at the serious Manjushri Bodhisattva and replied, previously, because of Zhenkong's matter, Xiao. Brother Zhao's tone was a bit unkind. I hope junior brother can understand. Hearing Xiaohua calling himself brother and calling himself junior brother, Manjushri was overjoyed. He hurriedly put his palms together and said, Amitabha, this is the fault of Laiyin Temple. When I saw Ananda's incarnation appear, I was also shocked and didn't know what to do. As for the truth and falsehood that this little monk spoke of back then, it was actually the truth. It's just that Zhenkong didn't quite understand. After that, Ananda was ruthless. The revered one was also implicated in this matter. It's good that senior marshal brother didn't go to the Laiyin Temple. Speaking of Mahavarakana revered Buddha, Xiaohua sneered, Namo Maitreya Buddha betrayed Laiyin Temple, is it related to this matter? This. Manjushri hesitated and said in a low voice, this matter is related to the three Buddhas. I dare not say anything. Now, senior brother is also a bodhisattva. Sometimes, you have to think for Laiyin Temple. What if I think for small exquisite temple? Xiaohua said with a faint smile. Sigh. Manjushri suddenly thought of something. After a while, he said sincerely, Namo Maitreya Buddha, senior marshal brother, Laiyin Temple and small exquisite temple are one. Senior marshal brother can help either one. Also. Xiaohua's heart moved. He asked again, what's the matter with Ananda? Dipankara archaic Buddha didn't say too much. Senior marshal brother, don't make things difficult for this little monk. Manjushri said with a bitter face, this is the matter of the Buddhas. How would this little monk know? The most important thing now is to see how to break the restriction. This restriction is really mysterious. If my heaven's foot connection can't work, the other disciples can't either. We have to see senior marshal brother's method. Seeing Manjushri like this, Xiaohua didn't force him. He stood still in the air and activated his illusion-breaking Dharma Eye. However, in his Dharma Eye, the western horizon was covered by a layer of white clouds. The clouds covered the entire sky, and the end couldn't be seen. What kind of formation is this? Xiaohua thought and looked at the sky. After all, the places where different clouds touched were usually the weak points of the formation. If he wanted to break the restriction, he could only start from there. Unfortunately, Xiaohua was destined to be disappointed. This was because the area where the white clouds came into contact with the relic scattered light was also a layer of clouds. The layers of clouds were still overlapping each other without any gaps, and there was no flaw to be seen. This is troublesome. Xiaohua stood in the air with a worried expression on his face. He still wanted to use his own divine ability to threaten immortal Emperor Gochen, but seeing that this grand formation was so tight that not even the slightest gap could be found, and even he was trapped here, how could he threaten immortal Emperor Gochen? Senior Marshal Brother. Seeing that Xiaohua didn't speak, Manjushri asked tentatively, this restriction. Junior Marshal Brother, you should go and ask the Dipankara Archaic Buddha. Xiaohua waved his hand angrily. Senior Marshal Brother's talent is shallow. I have just touched the threshold of the Thunder Sound Temple, and I have never seen such a mysterious restriction before. Manjushri was helpless and could only order the Buddhas to guard the west side while he flew back to the River Tide Temple. Xiaohua pondered for a moment and shook the Kunlun mirror, mobilizing 40,000 Fortune Gate disciples. 20,000 guarded the north side of the Longevity Town, and 20,000 guarded the south side of the Longevity Town to prevent any changes to the mysterious formation. Then, Xiaohua turned to look at Wen Chu and the Heavenly Man, and asked in a low voice, I've seen it again. What do you think? It's difficult. Wen Chu shook his head, and the Heavenly Man shrugged, expressing his helplessness. However, just as Xiaohua was about to speak, Wen Chu's eyes suddenly lit up, and he said with a smile, this old man remembers two of your abilities. It should be useful. Since Wen Chu thought of it, Xiaohua naturally thought of it too. He smiled bitterly and said, one is to forcefully activate the lightning escape art. Although Feng Wu has already tried it, he didn't go to the Star Moon Palace, so he doesn't know the profoundness of the lightning escape art. However, don't forget, when the lightning escape art is pushed to the extreme, the last bit of the clear feather pill's medicinal efficacy will be activated. I might ascend to the heavens. Huh, so fellow Taoist wants to ascend? That's a good idea. Under the laws of heaven and earth, all restrictive arrays will lose their effectiveness. We can naturally leave. The Heavenly Man laughed. Currently, I don't want to ascend to the heavens. Xiaohua rubbed his nose and replied, moreover, why would I do these things that harm myself for no reason and let old man Gaochen and old man Hongmeng benefit for nothing? Then we can only rely on. As he spoke, Wen Chu looked at Xiaohua's left hand. That's even more unacceptable. Xiaohua shook his head without hesitation. Although the Taoist sect has a rift with the Confucian sect and the Buddhist sect, we are still humans. This is a righteous cause. Once the devil blade appears, or the demon venerable murder appears, we will become demons. The Confucian sect is the best at spreading rumors. All our previous efforts will turn into water, and we can only benefit old man Hongmeng. Wen Chu pondered for a moment and nodded. If that's the case, we can only wait and see. This formation is really strange. Our divine abilities are not affected by the formation at all. Even our divine sense and eye-clearing techniques are not hindered. However, it only prevents us from leaving. This means. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked at the floating clouds in the sky. He said, the person who set up the formation has absolute confidence in trapping us to death. And they haven't revealed their powerful methods yet. As Xiaohua spoke, he was unwilling to give up. He rushed into the sky and entered the ground. He looked around again, but he still didn't find anything. Only then did he bring Wen Chu, the Heavenly Man, and the golden-winged Great Peng, Feng Wu, and the others back to the River Tide Temple. Originally, there were many monks in the River Tide Temple. In order to welcome Chuanzang's group and hold a grand ceremony to end the Sutra seeking of Nirvana, these monks had gathered around the temple. After Xiaohua and the primordial chaos ancestor came uninvited, these monks received the abbot's orders and gradually retreated. Now, seeing the strange situation around the Longevity Town, these monks came out from the River Tide Temple and went to various parts of the Longevity Town. They were either comforting the citizens or looking for flaws in the formation. The Dipankara archaic Buddha originally invited immortal Emperor Gaochen to the River Tide Temple for a chat. However, how could immortal Emperor Gaochen step foot into a Buddhist temple? He landed on top of the River Tide Temple, and golden radiances appeared out of nowhere, forming the shape of a golden throne. Immortal Emperor Gaochen sat on top of the clouds. Naturally, the Dipankara archaic Buddha sat on top of the 9 grades lotus throne, facing immortal Emperor Gaochen. Now that the situation had changed, the two of them flew up and sat back down when they saw their disciples flying out. They exchanged a glance, then turned to look at the Jiangqiao Ridge. On the ridge, the sky-bearing palace's Grand Mist Ancestor, Taoist Rider Crane, and Nyezi were sitting cross-legged. The three of them seemed to be meditating and turned a blind eye to the two of them. The Gaochen Immortal Emperor and the Dipankara archaic Buddha World Lord glanced at the three before retracting their gazes. They knew very well that the so-called sky-bearing hall was nothing but a nobody. Only the primordial mist ancestor was worthy of their attention. The primordial chaos ancestor and the other two came here with great risk. The primordial chaos ancestor was betting that Xiaohua didn't know about Prince Lan's matter and that Xiaohua wouldn't lay his hands on Taoism's cultivators. That was why he only came out after Xiaohua appeared. They wanted to take advantage of Xiaohua's Fortune Gates confrontation with the Immortal Palace, Thunder Monastery, and Great Sage Hall to show off their prowess. This kind of trickery was different from Xiaohua's method of advancing step by step. It was merely a method, and not strength. Therefore, the two of them were certain that the strange changes around the Longevity Town were not the Grand Mist Ancestors' doing. Give it a recommendation vote, bookmark it, tip it, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 46-42. Not long after, Sun Jian and Taibai Jinxing returned. They didn't hide anything and told the Dipankara archaic Buddha about the Longevity Town situation, as well as the myriad golden lotus blossoms that Xiaohua saw with his delirium dharma eye. Hearing that Xiaohua could see through the void, the Grand Mist Ancestor's body trembled slightly, and he couldn't help opening his eyes. Taoist Rider Crane and Nyezi also opened their eyes. The three of them exchanged a glance, and the complicated expression in their eyes became even more complicated. Manjushri Bodhisattva came back and told him about the situation in the west. Immortal Emperor Gaochen seemed to have thought of something and was surprised to hear that there were only white clouds in the west. The Thunderbolt Immortal wasn't with Hong Meng Ancestor and the others. Instead, he was sitting cross-legged on the Liao River opposite the Jiangqiao Ridge. His gaze was sharp as lightning as he looked at the people on the Jiangqiao Ridge. After listening to Sun Jian and Manjushri's words, he subconsciously looked down at the Liao River below him. He waved his hand and a streak of lightning turned into a fish and swam down the river. Unfortunately, it was only a short moment before the lightning was obstructed in the distance and couldn't float away in the slightest. Looking at the river water again, although it was still flowing slowly, the torrential momentum was long gone. Whether it was the river water or the fish, when they reached the place where the lightning was obstructed, they all stopped and slowly flowed back. Damn it, natural elemental energy. Seeing how the water flow was acting, Reverend Thunderbolt immediately thought of the natural elemental energy. He hastily released his divine sense to check the surroundings. Thankfully, the natural elemental energy within a radius of 500 li was still abundant. It was not obstructed by the restrictive array. When Thunderbolt Sage was inspecting, Xiaohua and the rest had already returned. He looked at Immortal Emperor Gaochen and the rest before sitting cross-legged in the sky to the south of the tidal river temple. Celestial Being and Wen Chu naturally sat beside him. The golden-winged rock and Feng Wu sat on the north side. The golden-winged great rock's gaze was like lightning. He looked at everyone and explained the situation of the Sarira lights in the north. Then, he stared at the Dipankara archaic Buddha and coldly said, "Old man Dipankara, what else do you have to say?" Apart from your Buddhist sect's Buddhist artifacts, which other item has Sarira light? How could it be so powerful? You must have fallen into the trap of the Mahavairakana revered Buddha, right? Amitba. The Dipankara archaic Buddha pressed his palms together and said, how can the likes of you understand the intentions of the world Lord? Although the world is big, it can't compare to even 1% of the Venerable One's mercy. Master Xiao Lei. Immortal Emperor Gochen calmly asked, where is the southwest of Longevity Town? Immortal Emperor Gaochen lowered his head again after hearing Xiao Hua's explanation of the southern flaming clouds and his failure. The Grand Mist Ancestor pondered for a moment, then said, I have some doubts after hearing Tao Master Zhao's words, but I don't know if they are true or false. I hope Tao Master Xiao can correct me. Please speak, fellow Taoist Primordial Chaos. Hearing the Grand Mist Ancestor's rare humility, Xiao Hua was a little surprised. He looked at the Grand Mist Ancestor from head to toe and chuckled. The Grand Mist Ancestor coughed and said, first, I feel that this is a premeditated ambush, and it has been planned for a long time. Nonsense. The Lightning Taoist did not give face to the Grand Mist Ancestor and said coldly, everyone knows this. Do I need you to tell me that? Hee, fellow Taoist Thunder, don't worry. The Grand Mist Ancestor smiled faintly and said, what I mean is, since this is something that has been planned for a long time, then this ambush has a purpose. This purpose is definitely the few forces that will participate in the sutra seeking extreme bliss. My sky-bearing palace and fortune gate. Coming to Longevity Town is definitely not something they would expect. Their target should be the Great Sage Hall, Immortal Palace, or Lightning Tune Temple. The Lightning Taoist snorted and said, is there even a need to say this? The Grand Mist Ancestor ignored the Lightning Taoist and said, how many forces on the 3 continents can contend against the Great Sage Hall, Immortal Palace, and Lightning Tune Temple? Dragon Island? Fortune Gate? Sky-bearing Palace? The Lightning Taoist was about to scold the Grand Mist Ancestor for being shameless, but Xiao Hua stopped him in his heart. The Grand Mist Ancestor continued, since Tao Master Xiao and I are here, the Fortune Gate and Sky-bearing Palace should be eliminated. Then. There is only the Dragon Island. Damn it! Zhenfeng shouted angrily from afar, Grand Mist Ancestor, are you trying to slander us because our dragon race isn't here? I am the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace's 10th Prince Ah. Now, I am the 8th Division Heavenly Dragon. If you continue to spout nonsense, don't blame me for being impolite. If it's the Dragon Island, then who is the Dragon Island's target? How could the Grand Mist Ancestor care about Zhenfeng? He continued to analyze, then it can only be the Great Sage Hall. Of course, if the other Great Sages of the Great Sage Hall are dissatisfied with the Great Sage Pang and Great Sage Hall, they will probably take action. However, I feel that if they want to deal with the Great Sage Hall, they should not target the Longevity Hall, but the road from the Great Sage Hall to the Longevity Town. There is no need for the Dragon Island to involve the Immortal Palace and Lightning Tune Temple. Then what does fellow Grand Mist Ancestor mean? After talking for so long. Why can't I hear anything? Xiao Hua asked. I am only reminding you that there is a purpose to this ambush. Other than the 3 continent superpowers, what else is there? Are there other hidden forces? The Grand Mist Ancestor hinted. Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat as he seemed to understand the Grand Mist Ancestor's meaning. The corner of his mouth curled up into a cold sneer as he asked in a low voice, Grand Mist Ancestor, can you say it clearly? Xingyue. The Grand Mist Ancestor looked provocatively at Xiao Hua as he said each word clearly. You deserve to die. Xiao Hua's heart was burning with anger. Thinking about how Su Ji had treated him well in the Star Moon Palace, then thinking about how Su Ji had blocked him, not allowing him to make things difficult for the Grand Mist Ancestor, then thinking about what Su Ji had not said. What he had done for the Grand Mist Ancestor in the past. Xiaohua jumped up from the cloud and said loudly, "Since Taoist Grand Mist has said this, then this Xiao has no choice but to say it. Xingyue has belonged to my fortune gate ever since the Xingyue palace appeared. Whoever dares to have any ideas about Xingyue, don't blame my fortune gate for being impolite." Everyone was stunned, and the Grand Mist ancestor was even more shocked. He hurriedly said, Fellow Taoist Xiao, congratulations, congratulations, this seat has been rude. This seat was just discussing the matter as it is, but I didn't expect that the flood would rush to the Dragon King's temple, and we don't recognize each other anymore. It seems like this seat's deduction was wrong. At this point, the Grand Mist ancestor asked curiously, "That's right, fellow Taoist Xiao, this seat is a little presumptuous to ask, where is the original owner of Xingyue?" Xiaohua replied snappily, "Fellow Taoist need not worry about that. Their whereabouts have nothing to do with you." "That's good, that's good." Although Xiaohua did not answer directly, the Grand Mist ancestor seemed to be relieved and smiled exceptionally brightly. "Damn it, do you have anything else to say?" The celestial being was also annoyed by the Grand Mist ancestor's words and shouted loudly. Of course. The Grand Mist ancestor's purpose was naturally to find out the whereabouts of Fairy Xingyue and Su Ji. Secondly, it was the ownership of the star-plucking tower. In order to avoid suspicion, how could he not have other methods? He agreed and said, "Since Xingyue is not the owner, then it should be the other hidden forces in the 3 continents. Among these forces, the most famous one is also the most likely." There is no need for this seat to say more. Immortal Emperor Gochen must know. Humph. Immortal Emperor Gochen snorted coldly and did not say anything else. The Grand Mist ancestor continued, "Other than some clues from the purpose, there are also some clues from the method used to set up the formation. This seat has not seen this formation before, but from the strange phenomenon that Taoist Xiao saw with my Tao Gate's divine ability, this formation should be divided into 4 different great formations according to the 4 directions of heaven and earth. Each great formation should have an array disk or array flag. In this world, to be able to set up 4 great formations of the same power at the same time, I'm afraid that only the 4 great clans of the hidden immortal continent can do so. Didn't the 4 great clans just get beaten to a pulp by the Fortune Gate at the Day-and-Day Cliff?" The golden-winged Great Peng frowned and said, "How could they have the strength to set up formations here?" Xiaohua smiled bitterly and said, "You may not know, Sage Peng, but the 4 great clans gathered 900,000 disciples to confront my Fortune Gate at the Day-and-Day Cliff. My Fortune Gate killed more than 300,000 of them and captured more than 500,000 of them. It is not good for me to kill these 500,000 disciples, but it is also not good for me to keep them alive. In the end, I simply let them go." Soft-hearted. The golden-winged Great Peng didn't seem to regard Xiaohua as an outsider. He blamed Xiaohua and said, "If you had killed all of them back then, how could today's disaster have happened?" Amitabha. The Dipankara archaic Buddha, who had been silent all this while, stood up and clasped his palms together. "Namo Great Compassionate Great Guanyin Bodhisattva, previously, this seat had been brooding over your attainment of karma. From the looks of it now, you truly deserved it. This seat apologizes to you." Amitabha. Xiaohua could only stand up and clasped his palms together in a familiar manner. "Dipankara archaic Buddha, seat of the world, you are too serious. It doesn't matter if I have attained karma or not, as long as I am merciful in my heart. If I wasn't forced into a corner, I wouldn't even be willing to kill those 300,000 disciples." Xiaohua's words were naturally directed at the Gochen Immortal Emperor. He didn't know if the Dipankara archaic Buddha was aware of this. However, he still said, "We Buddhists emphasize on being merciful. However, we Buddhists still have thunderous methods to subdue devils. For the sake of Buddhism's peace, we have no choice but to stain ourselves with blood." After the Dipankara archaic Buddha sat down, the golden-winged Great Peng suddenly realized something and shouted, "Oh, Dragon Master Xiao, this sage suddenly realized that you are not only the Dragon Master of the Dragon Island, but also the Thunder Master of the Immortal Palace. Now, you are even the Namo Great Compassionate Great Guanyin Bodhisattva. Oh, you are also good friends with my rock sage. The Star Moon Lord again. Oh my. You. Aren't you the #1 person of the 3 continents? Don't forget, Thunder Master Xiao is also good friends with my Immortal Palace's Literature Palace Lord." The Gochin Immortal Emperor said with a faint tone, "From what I know, when the Namo Maitreya Buddha attained karma, he also witnessed it on the Great Snow Mountain. Thank you for all your support. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.